Here we go then, your commentators Martin Brundle and David Croft.
15 weeks doesn't seem like a long time really, but it's felt like a long time since Abu Dhabi. Formula One's back, everybody. Welcome along. It's the opening race of the season. It's the 2016 Formula One World Championship, and it's the longest championship on record. We start in Australia, we'll work our way towards Abu Dhabi at the end of November, and we'll take in an awful lot of countries in between, including Azerbaijan for the Grand Prix of Europe for the very first time. But we start here in Albert Park. It's a Sunday afternoon. Let's have a short blast around the lake here and this 3.3-mile circuit. We've got some new faces on the grid, new teams on the grid as well, all trying to stop Mercedes-Benz, who for the last 2 years have had the most dominant spell since the Constructors' Championship was formed. 32 wins in the last 2 seasons. Who can stop Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg today? Who can make the most of the DRS zones and get some overtaking in? Who can go from the beach in the winter period and the holiday to success at the outright start of what I hope will be a thrilling 21 races to come? It's the best time of the year, isn't it, Martin Brundle? We have no idea what's going to happen between now and Abu Dhabi. The sense of anticipation is absolutely palpable, and even as I speak, the hairs are standing on the back of my neck.
Yes, and what a great place to start the season, as always. Between them, they did 8,931 laps of the Catalunya circuit in Barcelona for testing over 8 days. They ought to be reliable. They ought to know roughly how the cars feel by now. Of course, that was dominated by the equivalent of 20 Grand Prix races by the Mercedes team, so they're the ones to beat, as always. But we should see plenty of track action this afternoon, David.
And this is how the grid looks then. Lewis Hamilton with his first pole since Italy, his 50th career pole, lines up alongside Nico Rosberg. Then it's Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Raikkonen, an all-Ferrari second row. Behind them, Max Verstappen has his career best start. Felipe Massa, his best start since Japan last year. Carlos Sainz in the Toro Rosso alongside Daniel Ricciardo, his worst ever start in his home race since he left Toro Rosso. Sergio Perez and Nico Hülkenberg line up alongside each other for a Force India team, hoping for points today. Then it's Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button lining up alongside themselves for the McLaren team. Jolyon Palmer on his racing debut out-qualified his teammate Kevin Magnussen. Behind them, Marcus Ericsson for Sauber and Valtteri Bottas, who took a 5-place grid penalty for changing his gearbox. Felipe Nasser has Danny Kvyat behind him. Kvyat, the major casualty from that Q1 elimination from qualifying yesterday. New team, Romain Grosjean out-qualifies Esteban Gutierrez at Haas. Pascal Wehrlein lines up alongside his teammate Rio Haryanto. Haryanto crashing into Grosjean and picking up a 3-place grid penalty himself. 2 of the 3 new rookies here. The Australian fans have come to see Daniel Ricciardo try and get on the podium here and make it stick in his home race. It's going to be a tough order, I think, for Red Bull today. They seem to be lagging behind in pace to Ferrari and, of course, to Mercedes. But what about Toro Rosso, the sister team of Max Verstappen? What can they do today?
They've got a great car, 2 drivers who know which way is up by now in F1 as well. I think Daniel and Danny Kvyat will have a great car through the race. It sticks well to the track. Looks like it's got good balance, plenty of downforce. So I wouldn't count them out for a solid result this afternoon. They're looking forward to a big engine upgrade, maybe around the Canadian Grand Prix in June. So I think the Australian fans and the Daniel Ricciardo's fans around the world may have to be a little bit patient, but they've still got a pretty good package for this first race of the season.
Sebastian Vettel, Grand Prix winner here in Australia in 2011. His teammate Kimi Raikkonen won here twice for Lotus and on his Ferrari debut in 2007. And if Ferrari were hoping to close the gap, well, on the qualifying evidence yesterday, they did. Not by much, though. Last year, they were 1.4 seconds off the pace. Yesterday, round about 0.8 of a second off the pace. Nico Rosberg trying to get on the pace of his teammate, has been beaten in the practice and the qualifying session so far. This run down to turn 1, vital for him today.
Absolutely, and of course they've only got a single clutch to get the cars away now. They can't use the more fail-safe process with 2 clutches, and they changed that towards the end of last year after Spa. They've changed it again and further for this year, where they've really got to control the start themselves. But it's quite hard. You're not working any kind of hydraulic system. You're just working a little spring and potentiometer on the back of your paddle. So to get the feel of just how to get the car going down the rest. So I'm expecting a few variable starts today. We saw the rip-offs, the clear sheets of plastic on the front of Nico Rosberg's hammer on the visor when we were looking down at him just before they went away. and they've changed another regulation. They were supposed to have to keep those on board somehow. That's been delayed now until I think the Spanish Grand Prix, until they build glove boxes or something into these things.
Not quite sure how you managed to tear off your visor strips at 200 miles an hour and put them in the glove box, but yeah, we'll come back to that again. Tyre strategy is going to be different today. We've got 3 compounds of tyres available: medium, soft and super soft. The top 8 all start on the super softs. They have to. That was the tyres they used to get their best time in Q2. Perez and Hulkenberg going for the soft compound tyre, indicating again that Force India might be going for a one-stop strategy. Look at this, McLaren have split their strategy, Martin. Super soft and soft for Alonso and for Button. Valtteri Bottas, maybe he's trying a one-stop strategy to be right on board with him now. Has the soft tyre on, and behind them, Fiat, Grosjean and Gutierrez all going soft tyres at the start.
I expected more of them to go soft those that are able to do that, which is from P9 backwards. Perez and Hulkenberg have, as you said, Button, Bottas, Kvyat, Grosjean, Gutierrez. But I almost didn't expect to see any super softs in there, if I'm honest, but that's where they're going.
And what would the advantage be, very simply?
Well, a new set of super softs will probably gain you 3 meters in the start process just from the extra grip. They'll be faster in the early part of the race as well. But of course, they start the race with 100 kilograms of fuel on board. It puts a lot of load into them. We've got a track temperature of 37 degrees centigrade. Of course, those top 8 having to start on the super softs they used in Q2 that have already done at least 3 laps of this circuit and have a heat cycle in them. So we can expect to see, will they get to say as far as lap 15? I think it might be somewhat shorter than even 10 laps. We'll find out.
And the pit lane lost time here, about 24 seconds. So for the Mercedes, for instance, they need to build up an advantage of 24 seconds over the first of the soft tyre runners, who will be going longer in that first stint to try and get in, have their pit stop and get back out again. That's a hard ask.
It is, because it's only 25 miles an hour, 40 kilometres per hour down the pit lanes. Why it's so slow here. So we have to expect, if they get good starts and they're in reasonable air, Perez and Hulkenberg for Force India should be leading this race at some point.
Both of whom, of course, accustomed to running up the front and practicing the one-stop strategy to great effect over the years. As we're on board with Sebastian Vettel putting his Ferrari onto that 3rd spot on the grid, where he's only ever won 3 times from lower than 2nd before. Can he start the season for Ferrari in fine style after a great season last year? 13 podiums, the most by any Ferrari driver on their debut for the team.
And minimum tyre pressures are 21 front, 18.5 rear when they're fitted to the car as they're on the grid. A very slow formation lap like this, as Arnold Schwarzenegger looks on, helps reduce those tyre pressures. We've got a car stopped in the middle of the grid.
Very much out of place.
Toro Rosso colour, is that?
No, it looks like a Red Bull. That could be Danny Kvyat that's stopped on the grid. It is Danny Kvyat that has stopped on the grid and very much out of position. Now, what happens here? We can't let the race go off with that car stranded where it is. Are we going to get an aborted start, I wonder, and another formation lap?
I'm expecting the lights to flash yellow and then send them round again. They need to get on with it quickly, because they'll be getting pretty toasty down there by now, the engine. No fans on these, of course, no cooling fans. They're only cooled by moving through the air, a bit like a shark has to keep swimming through the water to stay alive. These cars have to keep moving. And away they go again then, as they'll clear. Now, Kvyat has to go into the pit lane as the cause of the false start, has to go into the pit lane. And if they can restart it, he is able to join the race from there. He's obliged to put it in neutral, open the clutch and put the steering wheel back on so they can move the car. There's a little button on the front that frees the clutch as well. But it suggests to me that Danny Kvyat thinks whatever his problem is, and that's... why is it going that way?
Pretty terminal. They're pushing that to the wrong side of the grid for that car to start again. Danny Kvyat is going to hate coming to Australia next year. Remember last year? His gearbox failed on the lap for the grid, didn't make the start of the race that afternoon. I kind of put money on him not making the start of the race here today as well, as he now has to try and hop over the pit wall and get back into the pit lane again, but I can't see his car going anywhere near him at the moment.
There is a gate there he could have come through back into the pit lane, but whatever the problem is, he obviously thought This is not racing today, this car, because he got out of it.
It's going to be a 57-lap race. That much I do know for certain, because this extra formation lap will take one away from the 58-lap race tally. The cars make their way along the far side of this track once more. Danik Fiat walks back to the Red Bull garage. What a wretched 24 hours that young Russian has had.
And of course they have to do that because the teams just don't leave any margin on the fuel. They're allowed to consume 100 kilograms of fuel through the Grand Prix, and they're not going to carry a lap or 2 laps worth of fuel just in case there's a false start. So they have to shorten the race, otherwise they won't have enough fuel.
Being spoken to by his crew, the situation being explained to him whilst the tyres are getting packed away. There is the car.
That's better. They've got it to the correct side now, but it's been on a bit of an adventure. It didn't need to go on. Unfortunately, it won't have much steering lock to get through that gap, but they've opened the door up, and there it goes. So they've slotted it in nicely. Well done. The Red Bull, I just don't know why they took it to the... They did take it to the left initially, didn't they?
They did, but they've got it back into the pit lane at just the right time for the field to come along and take their positions once again. Whether they can get it going and whether that Red Bull can take part, well, still remains to be seen.
Yeah, he should have stayed in that car. He should never have got out of that car. Lewis is pointing his car. He's going to have to sit on the front of the grid a long time, Lewis Hamilton, while they form up. He's pointing his car unusually slightly left. He's not in the remotest bit interested in going to cover off anything Nico Rosberg might do. He's pointing left already.
Aiming to join Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher and Jenson Button as drivers that have won this race in consecutive years. Bit of smoke coming off the Toro Rosso and the Force India as we have 5 lights above us. And it's lights out and away we go. It's a great start from Sebastian Vettel, and he is already alongside and ahead of both Mercedes. Nico Rosberg on the inside, Hamilton on the outside. Vettel takes the lead into the first corner. Hamilton's down in 4th, made that 5th as Max Verstappen comes past him, and now he's under pressure from Felipe Massa as well. It's Ferrari 1 and 2 as Hamilton has the Williams for company. Into turn 3 we go. Kimi Raikkonen holds off Nico Rosberg. Verstappen then follows them, and Valtteri Bottas ahead of Hamilton. Then comes Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo and Nico Hülkenberg, and then the McLaren of Fernando Alonso. But what a start for Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, it's a very smoky Renault. I think it was Magnussen at the back of the field having some kind of problems, but they were the issues we were expecting as Joe Palmer gets pushed wide in turn 7 of getting these cars underway with the single clutch as Hamilton thinks about coming up the inside of Massa and then thinks better of it. There's Joe Palmer then. I think he probably went on the grass coming out of turn 7 because he's fallen quite a way back from where he was.
Yeah, brilliant start from Pascal Wehrlein as well. And
Okay, understood. Box this lap, box this lap.
Magnussen's coming into the pits. He didn't start here last year. His car failed on the way to the grid. He might not make it to the end of lap 2 this year as Nico Hülkenberg has got past Daniel Ricciardo, you can see there on the first lap. I said Pascal Wehrlein had a great start. He's up to 15th. Sebastian Vettel, though, leads Kimi Raikkonen as they come round the final corner now. We look through the midfield. Lock up there from Hülkenberg. Alonso holding position. He's now in 10th place, just ahead of Jolyon Palmer, and out in front Sebastian Vettel, 1.5 seconds clear of Kimi Raikkonen. Then comes Nico Rosberg and Max Verstappen, and then comes Felipe Massa and Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton down in 6th place, and Sainz, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, and Alonso the top 10, and there's Valtteri Bottas having a little look at Nasser in the Sauber, can't get past him.
That start means we have got a Grand Prix on our hands, well worth watching, because Hamilton's got a lot of work to do on a track that's notoriously difficult to overtake on despite some of the long straights, and that Williams always carries good straight line speed and the same spec of engine that Hamilton's got as well. Hamilton adjusting pieces on his adjusting dials on his steering wheel, and Massa getting a proper swapper on coming out of 7.
I got some problems with the engine.
Esteban Gutierrez down in 20th place and having problems too. And there he is in the new Haas F1 car. Esteban Gutierrez struggling somewhat and quite a long way off the pace, it has to be said. Look how Vettel is flying away. It's like he's gone back to the Red Bull days here this afternoon. Brilliant start from Raikkonen as well. Ferrari were having good starts last year. They've continued that on into 2016, and we can see Kevin Magnussen change of tyres. Soft compound tyre goes on and out back into the race he comes as we look at Sergio Perez down in 11th place behind Fernando Alonso, making use of the super soft tyres at the start. Alonso had to bag a place or two off the line. Danny Kvyat still not in this race. On the timing screens it says he has retired. Magnussen back out onto the racetrack as Vettel now it leads by 1.7 seconds. And we look back, Hulkenberg stretching away a little touch from Ricciardo, but not getting too far away, and DRS will come into play very shortly. DRS is enabled. That might give Hulkenberg a few problems to contend with the Raikkonen behind, with the Ricciardo behind him.
Not least for Massa with Hamilton too. But crucially then, Vettel's got more tyre options, new tyre options than the Mercedes. He's got Raikkonen as rear gunner, and he's pulling away on that lap anyway by a third of a second over Rosberg in third place. Looking very good for Ferrari at the moment.
Certainly is. A long, long way to go, but new start procedure, Martin. Drivers having to deal with more things themselves. We expected it might cause a few problems. Maybe that's exactly what happened today.
Yeah, well, we saw Hamilton bogged down. He just didn't really get away. And I have to say, Rosberg didn't look much better, but Hamilton was getting pushed out of it left, right and centre in the traffic, and realised that he just needed to protect his front wing and his bodywork, basically, and make sure he didn't get a puncture, and ended up behind the Williams. But Ferrari have clearly got a system that's more user-friendly to get these things away on a hot track. 33 degrees dropped down to now, the sun's gone a little bit, but and a tank full of fuel.
Just looking there from the rear wing of Felipe Massa's Williams. He's got past the first corner, which for him in Australia is always a good thing. 3 times he's crashed out on that first corner, and at the moment he has the current world champion behind him. Massa running in 5th place, which is where Williams are targeting a finish for him today.
And then, of course, they've got Magnussen now, who's made that pit stop with the puncture right in the middle of him. He'll be blue
Hamilton's
flag.
got a great exit there. Magnussen almost getting a little bit in the way, and I think that might have just held up Hamilton a little bit. They've got a super exit on the run down towards turn 3. He's going to have a little go on the inside here. Massa goes wide. Hamilton swoops round the outside, and now Lewis Hamilton up into 5th place. And he'd been looking at that move ever since he got out of turn 2.
Massa had to go defensive, got in tight, meant that he ran wide. The angle was too acute from where he was turning in, and Hamilton was not going to miss that opportunity.
Looked to me like DRS helped, and he just turned the mode up to the highest possible power he could.
Yeah, but I think he almost certainly had to get out of the throttle there in part of that early manoeuvre because of Magnussen sort of trying to get out of the way with the blue flags waving at him. I was a little bit scared for that, to be honest. When that's where I went upside down. It's very tight in there. You can't always see what's going on.
What a start from Sebastian Vettel that was.
And look at the team said that's what really hurt Hamilton, was how close he got to his teammate and had to get right out of the throttle, almost certainly on the brakes actually in turn 1, and put him back down in 5th place.
The fireworks from Kevin Magnussen as well down the back.
There was almost contact there as well.
That between Ricciardo and Hulkenberg.
Lovely.
And you could tell the minute the lights went out, Sebastian Vettel was away and off, and the 2 Mercedes didn't even know he was coming.
I reckon Vettel would beat some of the guys away in their vans on the London North Circular, to be honest, with that start.
And this, you said, Lewis Hamilton gets bogged down behind his teammate there.
Yeah, and it did touch his front wing. He's lost a little bit of it, and it's lucky it didn't puncture Rosberg's left rear.
Very nearly a repeat of Spa a couple of years ago, but nowhere really to go for either of the 2 Mercedes, and this is the reaction of Maurizio Arrivabene. Yeah, 2 very contrasting emotions in the space of about 2 seconds there. Jenson Button, meanwhile, from the start.
And that is where Magnussen got his puncture. It's he just had contact on the outside of turn 2, and of course as soon as the tyre punctured, he went down, the back of the car went down on the ground, and the fresh skid blocks for the race were in contact. The titanium skid blocks is what all the sparks were.
And we saw Daniel Ricciardo getting past Nico Hülkenberg. That has been reversed since, with Hülkenberg in 8th and Ricciardo down in 9th. The lead out in front for Sebastian Vettel as he crosses the line was 2.2 seconds. Now to the 2 seconds as Nico Rosberg pulls to within half a second of Kimi Raikkonen. He's just set the new fastest lap of the race, and we'll take this with a bit of DRS assistance now for Rosberg down towards turn 3 and see if he can get any closer as Sebastian Vettel turns in, and Rosberg is a few car lengths behind but still stays behind. Let's go down to tempers and strategy.
Well, let's keep an eye on the front left tyre here. We're just hearing some drivers to respect the blue flags, and it looks like Gutierrez is keep on going, by the way. But when we're on the onboard shots, keep an eye on the front left. When that starts to get a little pattern on it, then it'll be time to think about a stop. The quickest stop for Lewis Hamilton and for Nico Rosberg is to use their new soft tyres and do a 2-stop from about lap 13 and then again about lap 38. But I'm interested, Crofty, to see whether Ferrari deploy Kimi Raikkonen to shadow whatever Lewis Hamilton does strategy-wise, and that means they could contain him.
Yeah, and the undercut works very, very well here, just to let you know.
And Hamilton must now be within the DRS zone of Verstappen as well for 4th and 5th place. And his lap time, as soon as he passed Massa, was very close to Rosberg. So Mercedes have got the pace, they don't have track position.
Yeah, they can catch up, and then they've got to try and get past. They had about 10 normal overtakes last year here. I think we're going to get a few more this year. We might get one at the end of the straight here as around the final turn. Verstappen leads Hamilton, 4th leads 5th. DRS there, assistance for the Mercedes, gaining and gaining on the 2015 powered Toro Rosso as they get into the braking zone. Hamilton just a little bit too far behind to make the move, but carries a lot of momentum and speed through that first corner, and now he really is hunting down the youngster, 18 years of age, has to look into his mirrors. Hamilton is there, but not quite close enough, so Verstappen survives the 2 braking zones at the end of the DRS straight as Dad watches on, knows what's coming. Now Max Verstappen, we've seen great at overtaking, show us some defensive skills here to marvel at.
Yeah, he's only a teenager, but he showed a lot of maturity there because he didn't get intimidated by that and feel the need to go and defend fresh air on the inside. He kept the racing line because he somehow judged that at 200 and plus miles an hour, but Hamilton wasn't going to be close enough to launch an attack on that particular lap. He didn't compromise himself.
Rosberg's just dropped back a little bit further behind Kimi Raikkonen. 21 cars running on the track at the moment. Danny Kvyat is not officially out of this race. They're working on his car in the Red Bull garage at the moment. He's got an electrical issue, and they're hoping to get him out. By the time they do, he will be well down, but they'll use it as a bit of testing mileage for this afternoon. Through the last 3 corners, we see the scrap now for 4th and for 5th place. Verstappen, who had a brilliant rookie season, who says he wants something a little more boring in his 2nd season where he could get great point scoring finishes and not have to do quite so much overtaking, against Hamilton, who made his debut here in 2007 and showed what a great rookie he was that season, taking podiums all the way up to the British Grand Prix at Silverstone in his debut year, and of course race wins as well by that stage. On we go down towards turn 3, and Hamilton once again has to stick behind. Frustratingly for him, that Toro Rosso showing that it's got a decent power unit in it, last year's Ferrari engine.
Well, interestingly, Hamilton struggled a bit in the final sector on that, so I wonder if the tyres are beginning to go away from them now. We're on lap 7. They're hoping to get to 15 to open up their options for the strategy through the race on these tyres. And look at his left front, graining up. So Hamilton will really be struggling on right-handers. We'll see when he slows down again. Hopefully we'll get a shot of that. But I noticed he really struggled to stay as close to Verstappen through the final corner on the previous lap, and therefore not really in the overtaking zone where the 2 DRSs are available to him.
Tyre temperature always so important in modern day Formula 1, Martin. Track temperature has a bearing on how these drivers can keep the temperature in those Pirelli rubbers. 31 degrees the track temperature at the moment. We've gone down 6 degrees since the start of the race time, as we, what are we, 20 past 4 in the afternoon here in Melbourne, and when the cloud comes over, the track does cool off quite appreciatively. Out in front, still red-hot pace for Sebastian Vettel, 2.3 seconds ahead of Kimi Raikkonen and his teammate. We're now on board with Valtteri Bottas as Carlos Sainz comes in for his first pit stop in the Toro Rosso, pitting from 7th in the race, and we'll follow Bottas on. Sadly, we won't, as Bottas, behind Ericsson, fancies his chances of an overtake down the main straight. We look now to see blue flags being waved. That's for Kevin Magnussen. Bottas pulls out to the inside of the first turn, and past Marcus Ericsson he goes, and up into 14th place.
Yeah, they're trying to undercut Massa with Sainz's strategy there, but when we go on board with drivers who've got the soft compound, yellow mark soft compound tyres on, they look very good indeed. Just that lovely sheen that you want from your tyre, where it's melting and gripping the track. You only have grooves in your tyres on the road to clear water. It's the rubber that bites into the track, hence these slick tyres. And I know many of you know that who watch motorsport a lot, but sometimes we have new people watching, and welcome. And that is why they get such incredible grip from these tyres. But the rubber just starts to shear on the surface. That's what graining is, literally the compound starts to tear apart on the surface, and what happens is it just starts sliding more and more, and the more it slides, the worse it tears.
Yeah. Get yourself a ball of mozzarella cheese, nice and shiny and grippy on the outside, cut it open, and it's all marbly, and that's what the graining tyre should look like. Hamilton still bogged down behind Max Verstappen. Then we look back to Felipe Massa, who was overtaken by Hamilton, now could get overtaken by Daniel Ricciardo. They're going to light that down at the first turn. You can hear the cheers as well as Daniel Ricciardo now puts himself up into 7th place. He's got past Nico Hülkenberg once again on the track, and Ricciardo starting to make a move through the field.
Tells you something also about how much they've improved what used to be called a Renault engine, now called the TAG, because I don't remember Red Bull breezing, I know he had to, but breezing past the Williams too often last year.
I can't get past this guy.
As we hear from Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas is now past Pascal Wehrlein, and he's up into 13th place. Ted, we'll go down to you.
Yeah, furrowed brows on the Mercedes pit wall, Crofty, while they figure out where their race pace has gone. Have the tyres just grained up on Rosberg as well? Rosberg not able to counter Kimi Raikkonen. I thought he'd be up against the back of the Ferrari's gearbox and challenging him at this point, but not so. So they're just thinking about whether they make an early stop and maybe trying to dent Ferrari's pace on an undercut with fresher tyres, Crofty, or actually extend it. Now look, is that a little preparation of some tyres perhaps in the Mercedes garage? Maybe extend the stint with Lewis Hamilton and switch Lewis to a one-stop.
Well, that's what they've just said to him on the radio. OK, Lewis, just take it easy. We'll extend this stint. And they're having to think on their feet just a little bit about that.
And it is one of the 25 topics they are allowed to talk to the driver about on the radio now, is race strategy. I mean, what Lewis just said of, I can't get past this guy, I don't believe they're allowed to say anything back to him now about, well, try this, do that. But we've seen him twiddling the dials on his steering wheel and trying all the tools he's got in there in terms of differential settings, brake bias, engine power. And I think that was Lewis saying, right, I've tried everything I've got and I can't pass him. Think of something else, boys, back there.
Felipe Massa's really struggling out there. I won't be at all surprised to see him in the pits in a minute. What we are seeing in the pits is Felipe Nasser instead. The other Brazilian whose name sounds like Felipe Massa, we'll call him Fred for the time being, but he just put in a 1:36.1 as Felipe Massa. It's around about 3.3 seconds slower than Daniel Ricciardo, who'd just overtaken him. Leader lapping in the 132s, mid-132s at the moment, as is second place Kimi Raikkonen, as is third place Nico Rosberg. 2 Ferraris and a Mercedes in the top 3 at the moment. And we get down to this battle, Verstappen with Hamilton still behind him, now just inching into that DRS range. He will be able to attack Verstappen again if he can certainly get close enough. 5 seconds behind this comes Daniel Ricciardo, then Felipe Massa, Hülkenberg, Alonso in the points, Sergio Perez running 10th at the moment for Force India. Hülkenberg and Perez, the leading soft tyre compound runners as it stands.
So they were able to say under the rules, yeah, we're just going to take it easy, we're going to extend this stint. That's a strategy situation that got included an hour or so ago. And so Lewis has sort of settled more into that position, but Ferrari have got the upper hand everywhere at the moment, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've got decent pace, they've got track position, they've got, with Vettel, more new tyre possibilities, shall we say. But I imagine this soft tyre will be, the yellow Mark 1, will be the hot ticket this afternoon.
Valtteri Bottas is now behind Jolyon Palmer. GP3 down a little bit there. Palmer made it very difficult for him indeed. Palmer is still making it very difficult. Well defended, Jolyon Palmer. Valtteri Bottas thought he had that. He might still have it as Palmer just gets onto the dirt a little bit and gives Bottas the chance to fight back going through 5 and 6. But he does hold his place in the end as the British driver. This the battle, the scrap for 11th and 12th. And still Valtteri Bottas is coming back at him. Williams, Mercedes power against Renault. Renault power, and through the chicane does go Valtteri Bottas. He had to work hard for that, and he showed his credentials, didn't he, the young Finn? While the young Brit had showed some great defensive qualities beforehand. And Palmer's now coming back at him again, but doesn't get the chance into turn 10 to retake his place.
Well, we saw when he became GP2 champion, his racecraft was excellent as Rosberg pits from 3rd place.
And they were preparing the tyres, Ted. It was for Rosberg first.
Yeah, it's the soft tyre, so they are going to try and go long on Lewis Hamilton's strategy. It's the only way, really. Wow, that was a quick exit. The front jackman had to get out of the way. Pretty smart on Nico Rosberg's pit stop. So that's a change to the soft tyre now.
Ted, does he get out? Ted, hang on 2 seconds. Does he get out ahead of Nico Hülkenberg? He does, only just by a matter of inches. That is utterly crucial for Nico Rosberg's race that he did that. So that is why he was in such a hurry to get away, because if he'd have been stuck behind Nico Hülkenberg on the soft compound tyres, lapping for quite a bit longer to come, that would have really ruined Rosberg's chances. But by a matter of inches, boy, did he get away with that for the time being.
Got to be another strategy, guys. Can't be stuck with this guy behind him, Brady.
Yeah, copy that, Lewis. We're going to try and go long on this, switching our strategy, I reckon.
Unfortunately for Lewis and Verstappen as well, if they pit now, they will come out behind Hülkenberg and Co, who started on those tyres. Perez is 5.7 seconds behind Hülkenberg. They might be able to slot in that gap. But that was, as you rightly said, David, that was crucial for Rosberg to get through there and then make good use of his fresh tyres. If you see the red lights flashing on the back, for 2 reasons. One is that means the pit lane limiter is on as Vettel then pits. Vettel pits for Ferrari. I'll talk about that in a moment.
Ted, down to you.
And it's the red striped super soft tyre, so this is the why they didn't do an extra lap at the end of qualifying. They were saving this very tyre with the red stripe, the super soft, the nice grippy one. Doesn't last very long in the stint, and you wonder whether Ferrari actually need to do this, don't you, Crofty?
Yeah, Ted.
But that commits Rosberg to his 2-stop, by the way, as it does Vettel.
It certainly does, but look there, the undercut that they've tried Mercedes with Nico Rosberg might just have worked to great effect, because here comes Rosberg. He's attacking Sebastian Vettel. Into turn 3 we go. Vettel just stays ahead, but look how much closer the Mercedes is by pitting 1 lap extra for new tyres and getting the fresh pace from it. Verstappen also pitted there. That's freed up Lewis Hamilton for the time being as well. But boy, have we got a race on here in Australia on this opening race of the season. Mercedes getting the start all wrong, Ferrari benefiting. But I tell you what, Martin, we are much, much closer now after the first pit stops for Vettel and Rosberg.
Yes, and refreshingly and pleasingly, Ferrari have got good race pace. They can take the fight to Mercedes. I can't help but feel Mercedes are still in clear air, got the faster car, but it's not fast enough to make a real difference, while Ferrari have got track position. I'll talk to you again now about those red lights flashing. One tells you the pit lane speed limiter is on as they're in the pit lane. The other tells you they're harvesting electricity with their motor generator units, and that's to warn the driver behind that even though they're on full throttle, the car might slow down a little bit.
Come on, box me, my front's really suffering.
Verstappen, after pitting, coming back out behind then Valtteri Bottas in the Williams. There goes Daniel Ricciardo down the inside of Jenson Button. And We see there Verstappen getting a really good exit and getting past Valtteri Bottas as well. Don't often see cars getting past there, but that was a super move by Verstappen, also by Sainz as well. We saw Massa struggling with his tyres, Bottas now struggling with his tyres, but he's got to stay out for another lap as Rosberg sets the fastest lap of this race. And the order at the moment, Raikkonen from Hamilton, from Vettel, from Rosberg, then comes Hulkenberg and Perez on the soft compound tyres. And those that have pitted, well, Raikkonen hasn't, Hamilton hasn't, Hulkenberg and Perez haven't either.
New fastest lap from Rosberg on those soft tyres.
There goes Verstappen down the inside of Jenson Button. Jenson Button at the moment running in 9th place.
Anybody who hasn't stopped for fresh tyres is really struggling. Those on fresh boots are flying along nicely. No wonder Raikkonen's moaning about his.
And Carlos Sainz, who you remember we saw coming into the pits, first and foremost, he kind of triggered the undercut, where you try and make up the ground on the guy in front of you with a new set of rubber. Well, that's really worked, because he's come out ahead, hasn't he, of Felipe Massa by quite some margin. And the Toro Rosso slicing through the field there of Carlos Sainz. We can go down to Ted.
Yeah, Ferrari have left it another, nice move there, Ferrari have left it another lap, left Kimi out there with tyres that he says have completely gone. I think they are, Crofty, trying to just mirror what Hamilton's going to do and try and one-stop Kimi, but Kimi's not too happy about it.
Maybe they'll throw the mediums on it, Ted, when it comes in, and let him run to the end and split the strategy and try and distract Mercedes.
Sebastian Vettel is right behind Lewis Hamilton here. Hamilton, who hasn't pitted yet, lapped at 1:34.2. Vettel at 1:37. Superb. Extra grip, extra pace coming from that grip as well. Sebastian Vettel gets past Lewis Hamilton coming out of turn 2, as you would expect, given that one of these cars has pitted and the other hasn't. And if you're wearing Ferrari red here, yeah, you're one of those that are cheering.
Lewis is going to go apoplectic in a minute when he gets passed by his teammate as well, meaning he's a full 24 seconds behind effectively with a pit stop, but clearly they're going to hope to get him through a one-stopper as well. But no grip at all then from those super softs that are on the car of Hamilton. He may even be told to quickly release his teammate because he's on a different strategy. I presume they can tell him that.
Well, he'll see him coming. To be honest, such is the pace differential here, it shouldn't make too much difference. And Rosberg should be easily capable of getting past. So what we've got here, Martin, is two cars in each team, one from each possibly on a one-stopper, one from each definitely on a two-stopper. Real mix of strategy that might not unfold properly until the very end.
And Lewis is not yielding at all, not interested. We haven't heard that he's been asked to, but he's certainly positioning his car to make it more than it's 1.8 metres wide, but he's pitting anyway now.
So he's coming into the pits then, lap 16, and they're looking to put the medium compound tyre onto his car and onto Kimi Raikkonen's. Is that the super softs, Ted?
It's the super softs, and it's a slow getaway for Kimi Raikkonen. So Kimi's going to have to do two. He won't get to the end of the race on this strategy. So why did they leave him out so long? Hamilton finally gets his wish and comes in, and it's the one set of medium tyres he's got available to him all weekend, and he uses them now. He's going to hope to go to the end of the race on this set.
He hasn't used them.
Fascinating. This is great.
Yeah, hasn't used them at all. Slots into the race behind Carlos Sainz Jr. and ahead of Felipe Massa. So they found the gap and they've got him out ahead of Massa, which they had to do. So what, 35 laps they reckon that the medium tyre can do. We've had 16 laps, that makes 51 of a 57 lap race. Can he go to the end, I wonder, on that set of medium compound tyres?
I'm told it's the same. So they did no work on Friday because both sessions were pretty wet. So it's really into the unknown.
Oh, and who's into the gravel? Is that Romain Grosjean? Into the gravel in the Haas is Esteban Gutierrez into the gravel trap, and his return to Formula One after 2 seasons with Sauber with the Haas team now.
The car upside down there, look.
Yes, you're right, Fernando Alonso, and you can see Alonso sat by the barrier and getting himself up, walking very gingerly indeed. We've got a safety car, and that's a massive impact. Fernando Alonso looks a little bit winded and a little bit shocked by that, and shaking hands with Esteban Gutierrez. This is down at turn 3, Martin, in a place you obviously know very well indeed.
If that's at 3, they've gone hugely deep into that gravel trap then, so it suggests to me somebody has had a car failure or something going down into there and made contact at very high speed. That is a pile of carbon fibre, isn't it?
And Fernando Alonso walking away from that accident, and it does look like he has come in at a very, very high speed through there. We saw Gutierrez and the resulting extent of his crash, and look at all the we've got brake boards, polystyrene brake boards, and dirt.
That suggests to me a massive car failure at high speed, and on Alonso's car probably.
Teams taking advantage now of the safety car period to pit. Hulkenberg has pitted. We've seen Valtteri Bottas pitting, Kevin Magnussen pitting. The leading drivers had already pitted, of course. Here comes Alonso. Oh.
Yeah. So it was not a car failure. Oh, that all looks a bit familiar to me, to be honest.
Doesn't it just? And then it dug in twice into the gravel.
So he's gone to switch sides as Gutierrez is slowing down. It's caught him out a little bit. And here he goes. So initially he's looking to the right, switches sides, and Gutierrez has braked much earlier than he expected, or lifted off much earlier than he expected. And up in the air it goes.
And it was just a glancing blow at first, wasn't it? But there's a red flag as well. As we look at these replays, the race has actually now been red flagged whilst they recover that McLaren. We won't get that camera back. But joy of joys to see Fernando Alonso walk away from that, shake hands and embrace Esteban Gutierrez.
That's the trouble with the gravel. It does tend to grab hold of bits of the car and fling it into the air.
Fernando Alonso didn't race in Australia last year after his crash and testing for McLaren, racing here for the first time then in 3 years, and ending up with a quite horrific crash. And I'll say again, Ted Kravitz, I am so happy to see him walk away from.
Indeed, yeah, absolutely. Echo that. I'll find out why they needed to red flag it, Crofty. I don't know if you can see whether the barriers require so much rebuilding that it would take too long under a safety car, or...
Well, I mean, they've stopped the race, Ted, I think, basically because there's so much debris down there.
Yeah, I agree. I think they just needed to get a lot of people out there. Ted, we've probably seen pictures that you haven't had a chance to see down there in the pit lane.
Yeah, indeed. All the drivers are now, lots of equipment being wheeled past me. All the drivers are going to stop in a line right in front of me in the pit lane. And from now on, they can change anything they like. And so it's a real shame that we have been denied this, the playing out of this strategic battle, because we had the Ferraris and Nico Rosberg going to stop again. Hamilton was going to one stop and go to the end, as were the Force Indias of Perez and Hulkenberg. Bottas had also pitted under the safety car and was going to go to the end on the medium tyre, as was Kevin Magnussen. But it's a complete reset in the order that we've got. Well, I'll tell you what tyres they go on, and another chance perhaps for the world champion Lewis Hamilton. You could say the big losers out of this were the Ferraris, though, Martin.
Yeah. Well, it certainly hasn't helped Hamilton, has it? Because he just made his pit stop and put on tyres that'll get him to the end of the race. And now, as Fernando Alonso acknowledges the crowd, and not even limping now, thankfully, looked a little bit like he was struggling to walk in when he first got out, and that is a very good sight indeed. And in many ways, there are no brake lights on these cars. They would be useless anyway. They slow down so quickly. A brake light would not really give you an awful lot in such close quarters at high speed. But he's just been caught out by switching sides just as the car in front of him slowed more quickly and in a place he wasn't fully expecting. And in many ways, it's amazing that doesn't happen more often, frankly.
10 years since his second world title, Fernando Alonso. First time he's ever retired here in Australia as well. Looking back at his previous record, podium, 5 podiums over the years, and of course a win as well, and ending up walking into the medical car.
And of course, as soon as the race starts, they're out of parc fermé, so they, as Ted pointed out, they can make changes, they can put different tyres on, And
well, the last time we saw this was at Monaco, wasn't it? A few years ago, when we had that red flag towards the end of the race. Once again denied as a thrilling strategic scrap that was going on that day. Sebastian Vettel just trying to hang on to the win there. But they're allowed to change things, Martin. They're allowed to change tyres. And eventually, when the track is clear, we'll be able to start behind the safety car. And a replay of the reason why we have this red flag. If you're just waking up this morning, Fernando Alonso down at turn 3. Not the first time we've seen a car flying through the air there.
And Gutierrez just veered slightly left as well, like he was thinking of take yes. There was a space. That was where that camera was in with the 50 board. 50 metres before the apex of the corner, that is, when you're doing over 200 miles an hour. There he goes. That was from onboard Gutierrez. Luckily his didn't go upside down, because what can happen is your rollover hoop that protects your head digs in the gravel as well. So thank goodness for the FIA safety test that they do. And there we go.
And what's the speed?
So yeah, Gutierrez just turning slightly left there. He's busy looking at the corner, getting ready to brake, and it's just caught Alonso by surprise.
He's already lost his front wing and had taken a massive impact there, Martin, into the concrete.
Look at the wheel tethers. What a fantastic job they did of keeping the wheels in the confines of the car so they don't fly into the crowd. There are 2 tethers on them now. And
yeah, I'm okay. Is he okay? Yeah, Alonso Fernando is fine.
First thoughts for Fernando Alonso from Esteban Gutierrez, and hardly surprising. Yeah, he was, Martin, wasn't he? Just going to the left.
Just slightly to the left. He was preparing for the corner. Whether he was expecting Alonso to carry on up the inside of him.
And that is what all the tests, all the safety tests in Formula One are there to do, to ensure that the monocoque, the tub, the survival cockpit, Ted Kravitz, remains intact and cocoons the driver from a crash like that. And it's a good job all that research does go on, because Fernando Alonso, as we say, walked away from that crash.
Indeed, yeah. It's so bizarre. The megastars, the gladiators that I just watched driving in a Grand Prix are now just walking past me. I'm stood just under the podium, Crofty, in the place that we're allowed to, and they're just walking past me, these gladiators, as if they've just done nothing.
Well, Verstappen's standing around having a joke with his engineers.
Well, Verstappen's standing right in front of me, as is Carlos Sainz. They're slightly bemused. Lewis Hamilton has just changed his front wing. It was slightly damaged, as we said earlier, so I don't know whether it was significantly losing him downforce. And well, everyone's just figuring out.
Eventually is get the race underway again, and it will be behind the safety car. Of course, they won't line up on the grid. This is rather ruined the race for the one stoppers. Valtteri Bottas, the 2 Force Indias, and Lewis Hamilton as well is currently down in 7th place when the race restarts. We're looking down on the medical centre there as Fernando Alonso and Esteban Gutierrez will go and get checked out. That's automatic. There is a sensor that when a driver receives an impact above a certain force, they'll go straight to the medical centre to get checked out. And that's Romain Grosjean in the one remaining Haas F1 car that is still in this Grand Prix. When the race was stopped, Sebastian Vettel was leading from Nico Rosberg and Kimi Raikkonen. Daniel Ricciardo currently in 4th place, so benefiting by those that had just come in to make their stops, those that were going on a one-stop strategy. Verstappen and Sainz, who stopped early, running 5th and 6th for Toro Rosso. Then comes Lewis Hamilton in 7th. That man there that you're looking at, Felipe Massa, is 8th place in this race. Romain Grosjean for Haas 9th, and Valtteri Bottas in 10th. After which Nico Hülkenberg, Jolyon Palmer and Sergio Perez. So both Hülkenberg and Perez running outside of where they expected to be, outside of the top 10. Marcus Ericsson ahead of Jenson Button. Felipe Nasser ahead of Pascal Wehrlein, and then Rio Haryanto And after that, well, Gutierrez, Alonso and Kvyat out of this race. Kevin Magnussen down in 21st. So that's the full order here after, what, 17 laps.
So the time continues. Time continues, and there's a 4-hour limit on a race now. And we go through a restart procedure now with the cars in the fast lane. They have set in the fast lane, and it's at 16:55, 55 minutes past the hour. 16:55 it is here, local time. And there's confirmation of that. And they will then resume behind the safety car. They get a 10-minute, 5-minute, 3-minute, then 1 minute and 15-second warning. All the wheels have to be on before the 15-second warning, and they're not allowed to move out of that fast lane. And they then will start behind the safety car effectively. It's a safety car restart from the pit lane.
Ted, down to you.
Well, guys, you are the engineer. You know those articles in the sports pages where it says you're the ref?
I used to love You Are the Ref. I sent everybody off.
You, Crofty, and you, Mr. M. Brundle Esquire, are the engineers, and I'm an engineer as well.
Right.
What tyre are we going to put to the end of the race? Well, everyone's going to start the same. You don't really want to make an extra stop if you don't have to.
Soft tyre, then.
Soft tyre? That's not going to get you to the end of the race, Crofty. I've been told to stop.
Well,
apparently, Crofty.
No, it wouldn't, would it?
Simon's got Gene Haas.
Yes, well, let's hear from Gene Haas while we work out whether we can ever be engineers and strategists. Simon.
Yeah, I am indeed down here in the paddock. Oh, that was a big old shunt, G. What was your take on things?
You know, it looked like Alonso was trying to, overtake Esteban, and we just got squeezed and ran out of room, and tires made contact, and Alonso went for a heck of a ride.
It did. It looks like, thankfully, both are okay. They've made their way, as Ted and Crofty have been explaining, to the medical centre. Just overall, though, you had both cars running there. What for you will now constitute a success this weekend? Romain seems to be running well in ninth.
Well, if he finishes, that would be a success. I'm glad we got through turn 1, lap 1, and both cars were up and running, and we overcame a lot of technical issues. So I think that was a success. We stopped the race, I guess, which is another first for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, welcome to Formula One in that respect. Continuing with that, though, what do you think about this new technical directive that's come on in towards the end of today? They've changed things after everything that happened. Was that just because everyone was getting together and saying it had perhaps gone too far, the restrictions on those?
What was the technical directive?
They've just changed it in that you're able to talk about strategy a little bit more. The engineers can communicate a little further with the drivers.
Well, I tell you, I heard very little talk between the crew and the drivers, so I was kind of wondering about that myself, exactly what the idea was there. So I know, doing the first race and actually being privy to what's going on between the driver, I didn't hear much communication, which I thought was a little bit strange, because drivers need to know what's going on around them, and I think that helps them a lot. I don't know, maybe in a case like this, I wonder if Esteban knew he was being chased down by Alonso.
Okay, Gene, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. Appreciate it. Back upstairs to Martin and to David.
Yeah, we saw Magnussen being a lap down and still running. Will be allowed to leave the pit lane for the others when they do go into a restart. Sorry, it's 3 minutes. Within 3 minutes to start, they must have all the wheels back on the car. 15 seconds, I mentioned, is they will have to stand back from the car when they're on the grid. So that is why you saw the Renault, I believe, of Magnussen's being pushed down to the front. So 2 minutes before they take off, and any car that's been lapped by the lead at the time the race was suspended will be allowed to leave the pit lane and complete a further lap without overtaking, and join the line of cars behind the safety car, which will lead the rest of the pack. So only Magnussen gets that service, because he's the only driver lapped and still with 4 wheels on his car, or a gearbox, or whatever else that works, whatever Kvyat had a problem with.
A lot of you out there are tweeting in, and we will be running #AskCrofty for your tweets at the end of the race, and getting your points on everything Formula One and this Australian Grand Prix, which has brought up a huge amount of incidents so far. But a lot of you are saying, Martin, Crofty, what would have happened if the Halo device that has been talked about to be introduced in 2017, a device, maybe a covered canopy or maybe a structure that's open but provides an extra protection against flying debris or wheels? Would that have trapped Fernando Alonso in the car? Is that something now that needs to be thought about in light of this crash and the fact that Alonso could have been trapped in or not? What would your take be on that?
No crashes are ever quite the same. You could argue would have protected him during the incident itself. Yes, upside down like that. I remember when I fell out of with the car upside down, exactly like Alonso's, funnily enough. I literally undid my seatbelts and fell out because I was upside down through the gap that was available. It would have been more difficult to get him out had the car been on fire. Would be an issue. So, as ever, you know, no two accidents are the same, and it is a key problem if you start trapping the drivers in there effectively.
As we see a replay of the incident, and all that debris seems to have been collected. The stewards will be looking at this after the race. Martin Donnelly, by the way, the race steward for this weekend. And he will be sitting down to look as to whether anyone was at fault for the race or not.
I suspect Gutierrez thought Alonso was going up the inside of him.
Really nasty moment for everybody concerned at McLaren, and who's a fan of Fernando Alonso and just watching the race here today. But Alonso walking away from that incident, as we can hear from the McLaren Group chairman Ron Dennis, who's with Simon.
Ron, can I just ask, have you spoken to Fernando? Is he okay?
Well, we believe he's okay. Obviously, he's pretty mobile, so I don't think there's anything too serious wrong with him. But I'm sure he's had his marbles rattled a little bit. Just
up until that point, Ron, how...
Well, you know, we've got a much better pace in both qualifying and the race, but it's early days, but it's all going in the right direction.
You confident about what you can do, Phil, what Jenson Button can do in the rest of this race?
There's, you know, obviously this stop has flipped everybody who hadn't stopped early into an advantage, so there's a bit inconvenient for everybody, but certainly we haven't gained from the stop at all, but from the red flag, but we'll just see how things unfold.
Thanks for taking the time. Cheers.
I should take this opportunity to say a very good morning to all those watching the race this morning at the McLaren Technology Centre in Woking, where they've had the first ever Formula One sleepover. As a competition prize, they've invited a whole load of fans down to the MTC to watch the race and maybe put their sleeping bags down in Ron Dennis's office. I'm not quite sure if that was part of the prize or not, but I wouldn't mind. He's got a big enough desk to stretch out on, and it'd be comfy enough, Martin.
Well, the carbon fibre and fabrication folk have got some work to do this week, haven't they? That's for sure, but thankfully he's okay. So we've gone past the 3-minute board then, so that's when they have to have all their wheels on and ready to go. But we're not really very far into this Grand Prix, Crofty. That's what's giving them a challenge. From here, a set of mediums will get you to the end, but a set of softs, probably not.
Yeah, but with the fuel burning down, do you take that risk? You're going to get extra pace, and is it worth giving it a go? If you're Valtteri Bottas in 10th, Ted, you'd give it a go, wouldn't you?
No, what, with the set of mediums, guys?
No, with a set of softs.
Oh, no, what I think, just to carry on the engineer, and we're going to find out in a minute because the tyre blanket's going to come off, is that everyone's probably going to put either the soft or the super soft on and stop one more time. Just because if you put the mediums on now, yes, all right, you'll have track position if you're in a good position further up, but you'll be a little bit slower. So we'll see. We'll find out in a bit. But certainly, Ron's just passed me now into the pit lane. But anyone who was at the front and who had a nice gap to those behind them, obviously, has been disadvantaged. And anybody who had time to catch up, like Lewis Hamilton now, has been advantaged.
So Magnussen just went out with the medium compound on out of the pit lane for his free lap round to the back of the pack, and we're about to see what the others put on. There's a 24-second stop here, don't forget.
Yeah. So soft on the Toro Rosso on Verstappen, that I can see, Martin. Do you want me to call them in as I see?
Yes, please. Haryanto appears to be out of the race.
Yeah. Hamilton's got the mediums. Hamilton's got the mediums, so he's going to the end of the race.
I think we'll confirm that. Rio Haryanto, his debut race seems to be over because he's standing outside of the car and the car's in the garage at the moment. So Manor I'd want driver down as well now.
And of course, Hamilton only had one new set of mediums, so they must be the same tyres then that he put on just before the accident.
I think they are, and it's super soft each for but Rosberg has gone to the medium. That's interesting, isn't it? He was on the soft, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So he's gone. So Rosberg's gone to the medium. Brand new set.
Super soft then for Sebastian Vettel
and Kimi Raikkonen. So Ferrari are going to have to stop again, and neither Mercedes, because they're on the medium tyre, which we think will last to the end of the race, will have to stop again.
I wonder what their warm-up feeling is going to be like on those medium tyres.
All the cars lined up in the pit lane and ready to leave behind the safety car, and we can restart this Australian Grand Prix, where the track temperature has now dropped another couple of degrees to 29, and we saw last year, Martin, changes in track temperature having a real bearing on the performance of the tyres. Mercedes going for the medium compounds, Ferrari going for the super soft compounds. One of them will get it right, one of them will get it wrong, you'd have thought.
They've got to get those mediums up to speed, the two Mercedes boys, and it could be a little bit of a handful in the beginning, and there's no doubt about it. Those on the super softs, like Vettel, they used Raikkonen, and the softs, which is Ricciardo, Verstappen and Sainz, will fire up, will come on song more quickly.
I mean, it's certainly a help, isn't it, that they're behind the safety car rather than starting on the grids. They've got this lap at least to get some heat into them.
Yeah, they'll be in the blanket sitting in the fast lane there under the red flag, though. So they're going down in temperature rather than up, I would say, because they just can't. They can keep pumping the brake pedal here, David, but you know, you can't put any lateral load into the tyre. It's only when you get sort of over 100 miles an hour and the downforce already kicking in that it starts to load and sort of saturate the surface of the tyre, makes them warm up.
Timmy Mallet down at McLaren. Well, it's been a wacky day. It's been a wacky weekend, quite frankly. Formula One is back and has given us, so far, 18 laps of really enthralling racing. Now, what comes from here on in, we're not quite sure at the moment. That's the beauty of this live sport. And what we do know is that Sebastian Vettel's going to slow everybody down now, bunch the pack up.
How do I turn the alarm off? I'm afraid I can't say, Lewis.
Homework required on that one then, so that's part of the new the driver. 27.1, the driver must drive the car alone and unaided.
And with an alarm going off somewhere in that cockpit. Here we go then, racing once again around Albert Park. Sebastian Vettel leading the race. Big lock up there from Carlos Sainz behind Max Verstappen. Down the main straight we go. And Sebastian Vettel ahead then of Nico Rosberg and Kimi Raikkonen. Daniel Ricciardo is the driver in fourth place, but he has already got Max Verstappen behind him. Hamilton is looking at Carlos Sainz. Has got to cover himself as Sainz, and he's done well there. Behind them comes Felipe Massa, Romain Grosjean and Nico Hülkenberg. Great exit from Max Verstappen behind Ricciardo coming out of turn 2. Has he got enough straight there to try and dance around the outside? No, he can't. And crucially for Hamilton, he can't get past Sainz either.
Those tyres have fired up beautifully on the Mercedes as it happens. No problem at all. Raikkonen caught asleep a little bit on the restart. He should have been much closer to the back of Nico Rosberg. But yeah, a few people fainting with a move, sort of having a look, but the braking distance is too short on these cars to really start having a lunge with brakes and tyres not at optimum temperature.
And if those medium compound tyres are working well and Sebastian Vettel can't pull away from Nico Rosberg, well, what does that do for Rosberg's chances of going on and winning this race? You'd probably think that they're quite enhanced, wouldn't you? But there's still a long way to go just yet. We're on lap 20 of 57. It's a 57-lap race, just to remind you, because of the problem Danny Kvyat had at the start of the abortion of the first lap itself. Big lock-up by Carlos Sainz. Lewis Hamilton gets a visor full of smoke, but he'll get encouragement as well, I'm sure, to challenge that Toro Rosso at the end of the next DRS zone.
Now what Sainz needs to do, he's got to get those tyres a long way if he can. But you have to say, it looks like Mercedes have aced it here in terms of the pace. Rosberg lost 7/10 to Vettel on that opening lap. Let's see how it unfolds when the temperatures are fully where they need to be. Once again now, Hamilton, despite that amazing car, On this track, it's difficult to overtake.
Thing is, though, Vettel needs 24 seconds, doesn't he, on Nico Rosberg to get in, make a pit stop and be ahead.
Assuming those tyres will go to the end of the race, they're working blind because they didn't have any Friday running. And because of the new tyre allocation this year, and they can choose their tyres, Hamilton only had one set of those for the whole weekend that he's on now. They didn't expect to have to use them, did they?
Ted, down to you.
Well, yes, but Mercedes did do pretty much the whole of winter testing, 8 days on a medium tyre, didn't they, Martin? I'm just wondering, I'm racking my brain, I can't figure out why Ferrari didn't just shadow Mercedes. All right, they wouldn't have known what Mercedes were doing behind them in the pit lane, and just put the medium tyre on.
Before we answer that, Jenson Button on Sergio Perez, super soft tyre on the McLaren, and Jenson Button using those well to move ahead of Sergio Perez and into 13th place.
You're a young driver, have a look at that textbook overtaking there from Jenson Button. Didn't panic, just drove it up alongside, didn't overbrake, didn't lock a wheel, left his rival some space, still had an option across the inside curb, and a beautiful move there from Button.
So Vettel extending his advantage, but not by as much, you would think, as Ferrari would have liked on that last lap, by 0.2 of a second. 1.5 seconds is the gap between the leading two. Kimi Raikkonen 1.3 seconds further back from Nico Rosberg. Then comes Ricciardo, then comes Verstappen and Sainz and Hamilton, who's still running in 7th place. Massa, Grosjean, Hülkenberg and Bottas and Palmer come next. Palmer running in 12th. Has to be said, Grosjean, who hadn't pitted, was the one who really benefited from that red flag situation. So he got a free pit stop and never lost position.
Absolutely. So he's in a good spot there. But Rosberg only 0.2 slower. In fact, just under 0.2 slower than Vettel. This has been an inspired move from Mercedes-Benz. And as Ted said, it's a little bit odd that Ferrari went super soft again.
Well, they obviously thought they had the pace to extend the advantage and to keep ahead.
But in a way, soft makes no sense at all, does it? Because they're not going to get you to the end. So you might as well go super soft and stop and take the grip, or go medium like Mercedes have done and hang it out there for a long time.
And when you've got track position, when you're leading the race, then you might as well try and go to the end, unless you think that they can't get to the end. Unless Ferrari think there's no way they're going to get to the end, and Rosberg's going to be really struggling wherever he is in the last 6 or 7 laps.
Sunset here is 7:31 p.m, so plenty of time to get this race finished with daylight. That's not going to be an issue with the red flag. But actually, they sorted that out pretty quickly, didn't they? What's that?
Into the pits comes Kimi Raikkonen.
Something happened. Broke something.
Okay, understood, Kimi, understood. Pull off where it's safe.
Dave Greenwood is race engineer with a tint of disappointment.
Fire in the airbox, look. Fire in the
there
airbox.
is. The engine, something has gone with the engine. Ted, you're down there?
Yeah, really nasty smoking. Kimi's just started. There's a little fire coming out of the top of the airbox. Come on, someone get with the extinguisher. Well done, Australian marshals. Good work. Ferrari were very slow with any of their extinguishers. Now they're just pouring extinguishment into the airbox. Kimi Raikkonen, nonchalant as you like. He's not exactly rushing out of that Ferrari, even though there's flame coming above his head. Just steps out. Another disappointing start to the season. Kimi Raikkonen, why does he always get the unreliability in this Ferrari? Oh well, that's it, they're down to 1. And I hate to say it, I think Sebastian Vettel's on the wrong team.
I agree with Ted, but there's another reminder that if they use this halo system next year above the driver's head, they need to be able to get it off very quickly indeed.
And for the 2nd year running, Kimi Raikkonen retires from the Australian Grand Prix. He was running in the podium positions. It's actually his 3rd retirement in the last 5 races. We'll put it this way, if he wasn't wearing a crash helmet, he would have had a singed hairstyle at the back of his head there. And is it a good job for Ferrari that because of 21 races this year, they've got 5 engines to use rather than the 4 that they would have had instead.
Vettel's had to get on with it. He realised he's knowing him, he's looked in his mirrors and seen what tyres the Mercedes got on it. He's plenty of capacity to have a look around him. That man's why he's a 4-time world champion. But he just pulled a 2nd on Rosberg. Vettel knows now, with the tyres that have been chosen, his only way to win this race is to get down the road.
Attack. Attack and attack and attack, as Valtteri Bottas is doing to Nico Hülkenberg at the moment. Bottas running in 10th place, Hülkenberg running in 9th. Because of Raikkonen's retirement, Daniel Ricciardo moves up into the podium places, which has suddenly got round about 90,000 Aussie race fans sat on the edge of their seats or standing on their tiptoes here at Albert Park, and they'll be cheering him on and giving him even greater encouragement, I'm sure. Ricciardo runs third, behind Rosberg, behind Vettel, who is still getting a bit of a poke on out in front and trying to extend that gap as we look down on the road that runs parallel with the Laker Park on a Sunday afternoon that would normally be nice, peaceful and quiet, but today reverberating to the sound of the 1.6-litre V6 turbo engines, the F-18 fighters, the planes that we've had coming over. It is anything but peaceful and quiet, really, here in Melbourne this afternoon.
What makes Ferrari's decision even more strange with Vettel's tyres is they're used. There wasn't even a new set of super softs because he didn't have another new set available. He only had one and he's put them on, hadn't he?
Yeah.
So it's only going to get 10 to 15 laps, as we saw. Most people stop 12, 13 laps into the first part of the race, some on 11 even. So Vettel on those used tyres, how far is he really going to get before he has to come in? And that means it's going to put him back in quite a squabble, 5th, 6th, I'd imagine. It depends just how much pace he can show meanwhile.
He will want to be at least ahead of Lewis Hamilton. If he's behind Hamilton, that really is game over for him here this afternoon. So he would want to certainly get ahead of that. And at the moment, he's got around about a 13-second advantage over Hamilton. To be fair to him, and look, the way that car's shaping up there, Martin, he's looking like he's in a man in a hurry to get past Carlos Sainz here, because the last thing Hamilton wants on the medium tyres is to get bogged down behind a couple of Toro Rossos on the soft tyres that are going to go for quite a while to come yet.
Hamilton, on the same strategy as his teammate, is now 10 seconds behind Rosberg, so if he's going to win the race, he's got to clear these cars and get on with it. At the moment, he's nailed on for second at best.
Ted, down to you.
Okay, so if it's lap 25 now, so I think Vettel's got another, 12 laps, if the tyres will make it, to try and get this gap. And let's not forget, even if he doesn't get the whole gap, which he probably won't, he will rejoin and put on a new set of soft tyres, which he has got in his allocation, and then he'll be fast at the end of the race. He'll have to do some overtaking, though, won't he, guys?
Yeah.
If Rosberg then takes the lead, Rosberg's medium tyres are fading towards the end. We've seen how hard overtaking is here. So stay with this, everybody. It's going to be good at the end.
Yeah, and I'm assuming it's going to be a 57-lap race. I am trying to work it out with less than 1 hour, 20 minutes to go on the 2-hour race time clock. I think we should get all 57 laps in. If we get a safety car, that might change again. We'll get another safety car, that might change again. Now, Marcus Ericsson could find himself in a spot of bother with the stewards in a moment, because they're investigating him, as you can see there, and investigating his crew for working on the car at the 15-second signal. That normally is a slam-dunk case whereby you get a very severe penalty under the regulations. I think he might be looking at a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for that one, Martin, if indeed they were.
Yeah, they can give him drive-through 5-second, 10-second, but that's just like on the grid. They can't have mechanics near the car. This goes back decades for mechanics getting run over. Can't have mechanics working on the car as the rest of the pack are about to drive away.
If they were doing it right at the start of the race, he'd be forced to start from the pit lane. Yes. And they push him into the pit lane. That's a new regulation for this year, and he has got a drive-through penalty. I can tell you, the stewards have given him the third most severe of the 4 general penalties that you get under the regulations. So a drive-through penalty, he's going to have to come into the pit, drive through, rejoin the race. They can't work on the car, change any tyres or anything like that. As we look down on the Williams now, still chasing the Force India of Nico Hülkenberg is Valtteri Bottas. And Williams were saying this morning, Martin, weren't they, that we're racing Force India here today, and the trouble with that Force India is when you race it, it's kind of a difficult car to get past.
It's pretty slippery in a straight line, isn't it? And of course he's getting DRS off the car in front anyway, and that's a problem Lewis Hamilton's got in trying to get past Carlos Sainz. Sainz is getting DRS help from Verstappen from time to time in front of him, so it's pretty much status quo. But yeah, it's going to cost Ericsson about 20 seconds then to potter through the pits at 40 kilometres per hour. In total, it's 24 if you stop for service, and which he's not allowed to do, as you rightly point out. But Rosberg is keeping hold of Vettel. Vettel, in fact, has just done a 1:31.7, which is a poor lap time for him compared to what he needs to be doing. And Ferrari looking like they made a mistake.
They've thrown it away, but that's based on the assumption, of course, that we don't get any safety cars, we don't get any interventions, and those medium compound tyres will go to the end of the race. And we're all assuming that because it absolutely chucked it down here in Melbourne on Friday. We didn't get any medium compound tyre running in. And for once, I'm quite glad that it rained, because it's quite nice to say that we don't know what's going to happen. 3 seconds, the difference between Vettel and Rosberg at the end of lap 27. Ricciardo 7.3 seconds behind and maintaining that third place ahead of Max Verstappen. And we could be on for a very, very popular third place podium here for Daniel Ricciardo, who's obviously been on the podium here before, but he had it snatched away from him. Would dearly love to go home from his home Grand Prix with something for the trophy cabinet, be it in Milton Keynes or whether he's allowed to keep it in his own flat, I'm not sure.
A year or two back, since we had these new power units, you know, a Mercedes would have breezed through the pack. It means the DRS that he's got there now. So the competition is catching up, which is a very nice thing to have to say.
Verstappen and Sainz looking good for Toro Rosso at the moment in 4th and in 5th. Hamilton's still behind them in 6th place. Massa running his own race pretty much in 7th. Worth pointing out once again, Romain Grosjean is running in 8th place. He benefited from the red flag after Fernando Alonso and Esteban Gutierrez came together. He hadn't pitted at that stage. He was running as long as he possibly could. So in effect, he got a free pit stop and never lost track position. And it's worth pointing out as well that Toyota were the last new constructor, brand new constructor, to score on their debut appearance. It was Mika Salo, finished 6th in 2002. And yes, I know that Brawn did it, and yes, I know that Red Bull did it, but they kind of took over from other constructors. Haas have come in brand new, straight out of the box, and not taken over an existing team. So for this one, I'm not going to count Red Bull, and I'm not going to count Brawn. Yeah, is that fair?
It's up to you. It's your game, your rules you're playing to there.
Yeah,
Grosjean started on a new set of mediums as well, and his pace is such that with reliability, he looks like he ought to be able to stay somewhere near the tail end of the point as well. But we're only just over half distance, aren't we? When we get to, we're on the 29th lap. So when we get to the end of this lap, we've just passed half distance. Luckily, the red flag didn't actually mess anything up too much, did it? It's a pity we lost Raikkonen through reliability.
It certainly is.
And sometimes, you know, cars having to stop mid-race and then do another safety car restart. You get gremlins like that. They don't really like cooling down. They're being fired up again sometimes. If there's a weakness, it's that kind of scenario often shows it up with a racing car.
So we talked about Romain Grosjean, first race in Formula One without assistance and company from the team at Enstone in their various guises. This is the scrap behind him, Sergio Perez and Jenson Button for 12th and 13th, and we saw the approach to turn 13, and we see the exit with Perez on the inside getting past Jenson Button. Button in his 285th Grand Prix here this afternoon. That man there, Rio Haryanto, ending early his first ever Grand Prix. Danny Kvyat, Fernando Alonso, Esteban Gutierrez and Kimi Raikkonen also out of this race. We have 17 of the 22 still running. And we're talking about Romain Grosjean. He's pretty soon going to have Nico Hülkenberg, and he's going to have the man behind him, Valtteri Bottas, for very close company.
Perez starting to catch Palmer for 11th as well on the previous lap, only by about a third of a second.
I tell you what though, Palmer, in that Renault, lapping, very similar lap times to the two Mercedes-powered Williams and Force India. There's not a huge amount of difference in their lap times.
Good pace, decent pace. They're a couple of seconds, 1.7 off the leaders, but we'll keep a close eye now on Vettel's times. And if he had to pit now, he would come out behind Hamilton and around Felipe Massa is where this man's teammate, Bottas down in 10th, Massa 7th, but Vettel has got to go quite a lot further yet to make sure he comes out. Is it going to be ahead of Hamilton? Well, only because Hamilton's being held up, isn't he? He's got to get himself in front of Verstappen and Sainz, and therefore that means Hamilton too.
He'd be behind Lewis Hamilton at the moment. It's Felipe Massa. There's that gap there, but they need Ferrari more pace from Sebastian Vettel. On that last lap, Rosberg was actually faster. So on lap 30, Rosberg was a couple of tenths faster. A big lock-up there from Romain Grosjean. Maybe starting to struggle a bit. He's on the medium compound tyre. He's trying to go to the end of this race on those mediums, which is an absolute absolute sensible decision by the Haas team and their chief strategist, Ruth Branscombe, to get him to the end of the race without a further pit stop. Jenson Button is not going to go to the end of the race without a further pit stop, and he's the first then, Martin, of these super soft tyre runners to be coming in. Looking at the condition of his tyres, you can see why. Medium tyres going on for JB.
Yeah, and they were new when he had the restart.
Yeah.
As I understand it, those tyres for Button, you had at the rate, yeah, it would have been new because he had 2 sets available at the start of the race.
So Button having to come in. We don't know the state of Sebastian Vettel's tyres at the moment. We can see the medium compound tyre there on Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes.
Vettel's lost 4 tenths on this lap to Rosberg in the first 2 sectors. Oh, that's covered the inside off properly, hasn't it? They're costing themselves a lot of time, but you are allowed to move once like that, as long as...
Guys, we need to stop.
Oh, Carlos Sainz in trouble here. He's coming into the pits to the relief of Lewis Hamilton, I'm sure. Carlos Sainz saying we need to stop, and I assume that's for just a tyre change and not a problem with the car.
And Vettel's got to do the same anytime soon. That's released Hamilton a treat, hasn't it? Vettel has to start thinking about the same move. Ferrari will be trying to work out the gaps. But you are allowed to cover the line like that once, providing there's no part of the competitor's front wing anywhere near your rear tyre. But that was quite brutal up the inside of turn 13 there. Carlos Sainz in front of Lewis Hamilton.
And that really has cost Carlos Sainz, hasn't it? He's come out behind now Sergio Perez, and Perez was running down in 12th place. So he's dropped back an awful lot there, Carlos Sainz. The soft tyre not working. The track temperature continuing to go down. They're all going onto the medium compound tyre. It's got a better working range maybe for these conditions. This track temperature brings alive the medium compound tyre, which is why Mercedes ran it, I assume knowing what the track temperature was going to be and what was going to be happening. Ted, down to you.
You might not realise it, everyone, but Rosberg is winning this race at the moment.
I think he realises it.
He's doing just exactly what he needs to do strategically, and I'm just wondering what Ferrari do next. Do they put the medium tyre on?
They've got to, surely.
Well, okay, by the evidence of Sainz, the soft isn't going to get them to the end of the race, but it would be quicker.
It depends how long, I suppose, Martin. They can eke out where Vettel and what he's doing at the moment.
Medium looks like the right tyre, doesn't it? Because Mercedes have gone just fine on the restart since then. They're 2 steps different, but
Verstappen's in the pits now as well. Sorry to break in, Martin. And look,
mediums too. It's the tyre, it's the right tyre.
But that's a late call from Max Verstappen, and maybe he's made the call for them because nobody was ready with those tyres. That's a very slow pit stop, and Verstappen is going to lose out here. As past our commentary box goes Jolyon Palmer, so he's at least coming out behind Palmer, and I think he's also behind Perez and Sainz as well. Yes, he is, as they flash through. So he's lost out to his teammate, and he's lost out to a load of others as well there, as Max Verstappen, by possibly making the call himself. Sainz all over Perez, trying to get past the Force India, but that might have wrecked his race.
Didn't do it any good, did it? Palmer then up into the points. Daniel Ricciardo in a nice position now, but with those 2 Toro Rossos pitting, that's freed Hamilton up a treat. He is now heading towards P2 in this race, I think. You're right, Rosberg is in such a strong position. Ferrari made a critical mistake.
Here goes Carlos Sainz on Sergio Perez. He's going to sling one down the inside. Oh, he locks up his brakes. They almost touch rear to front. Toro Rosso to Force India, and somehow the drivers managed to avoid each other as Carlos Sainz gets past Sergio Perez and up into 11th place, and he's got a little bit more to go now to get himself off and into the points as we look at Sebastian Vettel and Nico Rosberg. The battle for the lead that was over 3 seconds has now the deficit been halved.
How many times I said I have problems with the tires? I wanted to pit first, fuck.
That's Verstappen telling the team.
I wanted to pit first. You pitted Sainz before me. I was telling you I had a problem, and you pitted Sainz, as I understand what he's talking about there. But if Vettel has to pit now, he'll come out behind Hamilton and in front of Massa. Ferrari have got to do it. They've got to do it and hope that Mercedes can't get to the end on these tyres.
And once again, if you're just joining us, we'll repeat it. We don't know if Mercedes can get to the end on these tyres because nobody has seen the medium tyres in action before now.
I quite like having, I'm enjoying having 3 types of tyre available for the Grand Prix because it's mixing it up a treat.
Keeping people guessing. It's Jos Verstappen once again looking on his son's progress and shaking his head and not very happy about what he's just seen. And that gap, 1.1 seconds. Now he's staying out, Sebastian Vettel. Ferrari keeping him out for that little bit longer. Well, to be honest, Rosberg is very shortly going to be in DRS range and he's going to be catching Vettel even further.
So they must be trying to get Vettel into putting the soft tyres on, into that zone, which we think will last 25 laps. There's only
assuming the soft tyres though
go if they were.
Assuming they are the best tyre in these conditions, Ted.
Yeah, and Sainz, certainly on Sainz's car, they were not the best tyre. So this is just Mercedes' work over the winter, coming home and paying dividends in Melbourne, isn't it? They know this tyre, they know what it can do. They're sure, Mercedes is sure they can get to the end on this medium set of tyres. Let's see what Ferrari are doing. There's no point Ferrari coming in and putting the mediums on, is there? No. And Ferrari were quick in Barcelona on the soft tyre in winter testing, but very different conditions, different track.
Just to change the subject completely, as we are going to get a pit stop for Sebastian Vettel. Just looking out of our commentary box window as a whole gaggle of cars just flash past. And by the naked eye, Martin, seemingly so much faster down this main straight than they were last year. Appreciatively noticing the difference with the naked eye. Whether you're noticing that on the screen, I'm not sure, and watching the pictures, but well over 200 miles an hour down this main straight. They do look quick, but is Sebastian Vettel going to be quick enough on whatever tyres are now going to go on? Is it medium? Is it soft? I can tell you it's going to be the soft compound tyre that goes on to Sebastian Vettel's Ferrari as the team try and salvage what was a race-winning position.
It's like they just didn't want to go anywhere near the medium compound, isn't it? But last year, the medium...
Oh, they've got a problem at the rear? A problem at the front, I should say? That was a slow stop. To compound the problem, that was a slow stop. 5.6 seconds. He was stationary. He still comes out ahead of Felipe Massa, but he's lost 2.5 seconds, Martin.
Yeah, it hasn't cost him track position, but it has cost him a little bit of time again. So next man up the road then for him to try and catch is Lewis Hamilton, who is quickly hunting down second place man Daniel Ricciardo.
Ted, down to you, what happened?
Yeah, they just couldn't get off. The wheel nut was slow coming off that front left.
And Ricciardo going nicely on the soft tyre, it must be said though, Ted. So
we haven't seen. Let's talk more about Red Bull, shall we? You know, fantastic. They called it right at the safety car of the red flag restart. Here you go, replay.
Yeah, they couldn't get that super soft tyre on, couldn't get the gun attached. It never rains, but it pours sometimes. And Maurizio Arrivabene shouting quite so loudly at the moment, is he?
Fastest man on the track comfortably. Lewis Hamilton in third place. Suddenly, the sun starts to shine. The lights coming in, the track. He stopped looking at the gearbox of a Toro Rosso. That's made his afternoon a little bit better, hasn't it?
Well, talking of bright things, the Pantone yellow for Jolyon Palmer and the Renault, the 116C, I think it is. The Renault corporate colours now has the two Toro Rossos behind him, Sainz and Verstappen, who was quickly caught up with his teammate. probably quite glad that Jolyon Palmer's up ahead and maybe holding Sainz up a little bit. This is the battle for 9th, for 10th and for 11th.
Renault reminds me of my beloved Norfolk mustard. Good as mustard in Norfolk. Hot as mustard.
Oh yeah, keen as. It's a great scrap. We've seen Palmer use his defensive skills to ward off Valtteri Bottas as long as he could. Well, he's now got Sainz and he's got Verstappen coming up behind him as well, and no way through into turn 3. Out in front, the gap is 8.4 seconds between Rosberg and Ricciardo. It's 11.4 seconds back to Hamilton. Hamilton just got a second faster than Rosberg on the previous lap. Plenty of time, 20 laps to go at that pace to try and make up the difference. If Hamilton can get past Ricciardo quite easily, he could still have a scrap for the lead at the end. As for Sebastian Vettel, his lap times just about half a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton through the first 2 sectors of what is lap 38 of 57. The Australian Grand Prix here in Melbourne, past halfway distance. We've got 17 drivers still running. And Nico Rosberg on course to start this season the way that he finished last season and pick up a victory, assuming his medium tyres can make it to the end and assuming that he can still keep that pace and fight off his teammate, who the rate he's going will be right with him in around about 10.5 laps time. Down the main straight, Palmer in 9th place, and his racing debut still has Carlos Sainz right behind him. Sainz now picks up the toe, gets into the slipstream, wants that Ferrari power to accelerate him down the straight, wants to get down the inside, wants that little bit more pace, hasn't got it. Renault power keeping ahead of Ferrari power still.
Palmer's tyres went on, of course, lap 18 for the safety car, and these two boys have just...
Can I try to get fast?
Yes.
Verstappen, not for the first time ever, is saying, look, get him out of the way, I want to have a go here. Sainz wants to have a go himself. He's lost out a little bit there. He definitely held up his teammate over him and then had to back off himself.
Palmer driving very wisely. He's not getting flustered with these two behind him, but they're about to get angry with each other and him.
We've heard some colourful language from Max Verstappen once already this afternoon. I would imagine there's a fair bit more coming over the team radio, aimed at his teammates' benefit. But should Toro Rosso swap them round, I wonder?
Let me try, because this takes too long.
Let's do it.
I think he's saying, yeah, you can pass Sainz if you want and have a go, but I don't think they're telling Sainz to let him through. I'm not sure he's paying attention if they did, given previous history.
Well, should Sainz be told to move aside? Should Verstappen be allowed to?
Hamilton relentlessly catching Ricciardo. Hamilton now only 11 seconds off the lead.
Down the main straight we come once again. Sainz behind Palmer, Verstappen seething behind Sainz, wanting to have a shot at the Renault, can't get past his teammate first.
Once again, that Renault showing way better straight line speed this year, isn't it? Because he hasn't got DRS, Joe Palmer, and the two behind him have.
And this is where Verstappen and Sainz almost tangled on the previous lap. This time around, Sainz isn't in a position to try and attack that Renault, and they stay Renault, Toro Rosso, 9th, 10th and 11th for that little bit longer. Ted, down to you.
So Daniel Ricciardo desperately trying to make his soft tyres work and last to the end of the race. It looks like he might not make it. This is really desperate for Red Bull. What do they do? They've got to try and get to the end, haven't they, on this set of tyres? But he's losing a lot of space. He's going to lose that position to Hamilton, you would have thought, Martin. And then he's going to be in a big fight with Massa, who's on the medium tyres, and who we think can get to the end of the race.
Well, the trouble is, Ted, he comes out behind Felipe Massa if he stops now.
I tell you what, it's all going to close up at the moment, because Vettel's flying on those soft tyres, much quicker than Rosberg in the lead. Hamilton's catching Rosberg as well, so it's going to concertina up, and Vettel's pace at the moment is cracking, Ted, a 30.6 compared to, we've not got driver tracker up here.
Come on, we have to do something.
Yeah, well, Max, last year you gave us some great overtaking. Let's see if you can throw one down the inside on your teammate this year. But it's often much more difficult to try to overtake your teammate in the same machinery than it is another driver driving another car, and thus it's proving so far.
Especially, well, the driver you're trying to overtake is focused on the car in front of him and not you. You can't mug him. You can't just send one up the inside because he may not see you.
Carlos, push.
I am pushing, don't tell me to push.
Yes, otherwise we will swap next lap.
Okay, so now's the time to overtake. Oh, I don't like
Marcus Ericsson.
Don't like to see cars going slow on that part of the track. It's a blind, fast left-hander.
That's better. Fernando Alonso smiling. Speaking Italian.
It's a proper crash. You've got to respect somebody who has a proper crash. It was,
There's Marcus Ericsson again. Problems with his engine or gearbox. Certainly sounded mechanical, didn't it? If you were Toro Rosso, you're Franz Tost now. Do you want, and is he having a go? Verstappen is having a go. Sainz locks up once again, having problems maybe with his tyres there, but that's a massive lock-up under pressure from Max Verstappen. Did the pressure induce then the lock-up?
Sainz is not going to yield, is he? He's not interested. Not interested at all.
But I don't think he should.
This squabble between these two, who are emerging stars in Formula One, is going to be like Hamilton-Rosberg,
yeah,
isn't it? And probably even more intense, actually.
If you were the Toro Rosso team boss, would you be asking Sainz to move aside?
They've told him, really, haven't they?
Yeah.
Push, or we're going to swap. Whether he understood that exactly, I don't know.
Well,
but
he said he's pushing.
He said he's pushing, but I don't know whether he caught the swap bit when he was busy. But
meanwhile, as we watch the battle for 9th, 10th and 11th, and that is Franz Tost shaking his head and wondering, what did I do to deserve these two precocious young talents who don't listen to a word I say. Lewis Hamilton is within DRS range of Daniel Ricciardo, and now Sebastian Vettel is less than 7 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton and lapping 7/10 quicker on the previous lap, and Nico Rosberg out in front has a pretty much 10-second gap between himself and Ricciardo. Hamilton with DRS down the main straight needs to get this overtaking done to continue his pursuit of his teammate, and he's going down the inside as Lewis Hamilton, and he makes it into the apex and takes second place, and that was as comfortable as Lewis Hamilton could have wished.
Super critical as well. Hamilton can still win this race, so can Vettel, so can Rosberg. Rosberg's pace is poor. Now, I suspect it might just pick up when he sees who's P2, frankly, and who's catching him. Rosberg will be quite alarmed now at the rate at which Hamilton starts to catch. Has he been just looking after his tyres up there?
I already think he's got the message, Martin, and he's actually put in a very good first sector on this lap. Obviously, Hamilton's had a bit of DRS assistance. So here comes Carlos Sainz on DRS, and down into turn one, Sainz has finally got past Jolyon Palmer, and that's an overtake that's been waiting for a while. And Max Verstappen now seizes the moment, sizes up Jolyon Palmer, and can he get past the Renault? Can he get into the corner? Yes, just. It took Carlos Sainz half a dozen laps. It took Max Verstappen 2 more corners once Palmer was the next man ahead. And that's why Verstappen was saying, let me at him, let me have a go. And he rather proved why he was demanding that, because it took Sainz far too long.
I accept what you're saying, but also Palmer was obviously out of position on the turn into turn one, so slow off too. Verstappen having the advantage also of DRS down there, but he did drive beautifully in turn 3 and 4 when he got there, but Palmer out of position.
Daniel Ricciardo pits. Red Bull can't make those soft tyres go until the end of the race. On go the super soft tyres, and on now comes the chase for Daniel Ricciardo. Disappointment then that he's now out of the podium places. But would he really have survived to the end had he have kept on going? There's Felipe Massa, the man that Ricciardo will be chasing. He comes out in 5th place, does the home favourite. Disqualified from 2nd here in 2014 and was lapped 6th back in 2015. It's a much better 2016 for him, even though he's out of the podium places. And now Verstappen chases after Sainz, and once again want the team to ask him to move, but I think this time the team will say, no, you want to get past him, you have got to do it yourself.
So Ricciardo got 24 laps out of those tyres. Vettel is going to have to get a little bit less, so it suggests he might be okay. So 15 seconds covers the top 3 now. Rosberg, Hamilton and Vettel, with completely different concepts between Mercedes and Ferrari as to how to get from a safety car pit lane restart after a red flag to the end of the race. Let's see how it turns out.
So there goes Sainz down the inside. Thought he might just have gone a bit too deep there into turn 1, but manages to control it. Palmer struggling, I think, for grip and traction on the exit. And this is how Verstappen got past Jolyon Palmer.
Good driving from all three, not to start throwing bits of front wing and punctured tyres around the place. But Rosberg has indeed picked up his pace, as has Hamilton. And they're all lapping within 2/10 now, Rosberg, Hamilton, Vettel. Ferrari looked like they just wanted to stay off those medium compound. They didn't want to go near them, did they?
Maybe you've got to sometimes just trust your gut instinct, haven't you, rather than just wanting to go for the data all the time. Ted, down to you.
Yeah, but maybe they didn't like the medium tyres because everything from the winter has shown that they were really good on the soft tyres. Sebastian Vettel's going to have to make his soft tyres last now to the end of the race, something Daniel Ricciardo certainly couldn't do, but Vettel will have to do 21 laps, I think, on his set of soft tyres, which should be fine. But just to underline how comfortable Mercedes are with this white stripe medium tyres, guys, they used 60 sets of medium tyres at the second test in Barcelona, so they know that tyre inside out. I know, different conditions, different track, still.
Next good fight we're going to see is Ricciardo catching Massa. Now he's changed his tyres. Ricciardo flying along there in 5th place. Grosjean up to 6th, Crosby, and doing solid lap times on a set of tyres that should get him to the end of the Grand Prix. Romain Grosjean doing a stellar job for the inaugural Grand Prix of the Haas team,
who have said that their target this season is to score points. Maybe not in their first race, although they certainly said they would dearly love to do it. On course to do that at the moment. And remember, the last brand new constructor to score points in their debut race for a team built from scratch at Toyota back in 2002 when they finished 6th with Mika Salo.
I hope they've got good mirrors on it, because he's got Hülkenberg and Bottas climbing all over the back of him. And he's held them off now for 20 laps.
That's why, if you're a new team, that's why you pick up the likes of Romain Grosjean as well, though. Experience that he gives the team in all sorts of different areas, but very much on the track. The man they were after, Grosjean, saying that he first sat down with the team principal, Gunther Steiner, in Monza last year to have a chat. Sat down with Gene Haas the very next night, Friday into Saturday, and made his mind up for the Italian Grand Prix last year that he wanted to leave Enstone and go off to join Haas F1.
Joe Palmer's about to be under pressure for 11th place from Perez, and Magnussen closing in his teammate as well, who of course was allowed to unlap himself before the restart after the red flag. So Palmer slipping away from the points now, but he could no longer keep those Toro Rossos behind him.
Jenson Button running down in 15th place for McLaren at the moment. The only car behind him on the track is Pascal Wehrlein in the Manor, which is disappointing after some good early pace from McLaren. Button now slipping further and further behind. As we see Felipe Massa and Daniel Ricciardo, and the fight for 4th and for 5th, and Ricciardo on a brand new set of super soft tyres. Will fancy his chances here and might just get a nice big standing ovation going into turn 1, but he's got to get past Felipe Massa first, and he's got DRS assistance to try and do that. And the Renault Power, the badged up tag engine, blasts Ricciardo into 4th place, and he does get that standing ovation, and he will hear the screams and the cheers of the crowd as he races off and leaves Felipe Massa in his mirrors.
Problem for Daniel Ricciardo is it's 20 seconds up the road. His next rival, Sebastian Vettel, his old teammate, his nemesis, of course, in the Red Bull team. Well, you have to say, pretty much put some manners on Vettel that year.
Absolutely. Talking of Vettel, Vettel and Hamilton is a scrap that's going to unfold in a few laps' time, because that pace you were talking about that Sebastian Vettel is on is nudging him nearer and nearer and nearer to Hamilton. We're on lap 46 and he's 5 seconds behind. As Ricciardo just gets the cheers. The fans loving that on the hill over by turns 8 and 9. Rosberg's picked up his pace out in front. It's looked good for him for quite a while. It's looking exceptional for him at this moment in time. Try and emulate his father, Keke Rosberg, of course, won the Australian Grand Prix The first Australian World Championship Grand Prix in 1985. Well, Rosberg at the moment has a 10.5-second lead on his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton has 4.3 seconds between himself and Sebastian Vettel. Vettel was half a second quicker on the previous lap. And then there's that gap to Daniel Ricciardo, and it's a 20-second gap, as you rightly said, Martin. The car in between Pascal Wehrlein, the only one of the cars out on the track at the moment that has been lapped.
The whole race I'm in front and I'm pulling away, and now you don't have me pass. It's a joke, really.
Young man, and not afraid to express his emotions, Martin, in a slightly more colourful way than others.
You'll be getting a detention and 100 lines with that sort of language. Ricciardo's still flying along on those tyres. Obviously fuel burning down nicely now towards the end of the Grand Prix as we're on lap 47. But what else is going on down there? Still, Grosjean now pulled out a 1.5 seconds on Hulkenberg, who's out of DRS range, and Hulkenberg has Bottas, Sainz and Verstappen on his tail as well. So that's quite a little train going on there. Grosjean, Hulkenberg, Bottas, Sainz and Verstappen, and there it is.
And I wouldn't bet on that being the order of 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th by the end of this race. Palmer's dropped off the rear of that now. He's 7.5 seconds down on Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen's just down on everybody that might be in the Toro Rosso management at the moment, and he's very, very nearly off the track and out of the race. Got all out of shape going through turn 11, got onto the curb in the AstroTurf, and in the end managed to save it.
He's not going to get driver of the day. He will get swearer of the day, but that was unquestionably save of the day.
Certainly was. Fastest lap of the day at the moment goes to Daniel Ricciardo, by the way. What do you make of this voting for the driver of the day? Are you in favour of this one?
Yeah, as long as it engages the fans, but I've yet to hear how they vote. How do they vote?
I assume it's via social media, certainly, but most of the time it's just listen to you for your driver of the day and agree.
Yeah, I say it looked actually from the forward-facing, or the camera sort of head on to him, that looked a bit more dramatic, didn't it?
He's quickly caught back up again because that Williams is very much holding up Carlos Sainz. I wouldn't mind being in the debrief at Toro Rosso at the end of this race.
Take a swear box with you, you might make 50 quid.
It's interesting to see and hear from the two drivers at the end of it. I mean, Sainz will say he's pushing, he's not doing anything wrong. Why, you know, he's got track position. Why should they let Max past?
Yeah, I agree. If you want to get past, overtake him. So this is what I was hoping for, though. All the way through the field, lots of action. I think this is going to be a story of 2016 because we've got, you know, a quality and depth on this grid, better than we've had for 10 seasons, as far as I'm concerned. Great talent, emerging talent. Thankfully, it seems like Ferrari can at least keep Mercedes occupied, and then we're going to see loads of this through the season because the cars are more reliable. They seem so close in performance. We've got a third tyre added to race day as well, just to add another level of challenge, if you like. And look at Grosjean, he's definitely getting away from Hulkenberg.
I was just about to say he's broken the Hulkenberg challenge, isn't he? Hulkenberg's just dropping back off now into the clutches of Bottas and Sainz and Verstappen. I wonder if Hamilton has done the same to Sebastian Vettel as well. I've been monitoring their lap time. Vettel's been catching up, but he needs to be catching up a little bit faster at the moment, and only 0.2 of a second on the last lap. I wonder if the life is starting to go out a little bit of the soft compound tyre that Sebastian Vettel's on.
Yeah, they've only got to do 22 laps. Ricciardo got fed up with his after 24.
Yeah. It's the performance, isn't it, that Sebastian Vettel's wanting at the moment, and the pace to come from it, as we're on board with Valtteri Bottas at the moment. Saying that, Vettel just pulled out 0.4 in the final sector, so it's now down to 3.2 seconds, the gap between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel.
So we haven't got a driver tracker up in the box today. This new rabbit hutch they've given us for this year. Breathe in. So I don't know if they're catching trackers out there from time to time.
Tell you what, rabbits would be cosy in here.
Look at that, 28.997 then for Ricciardo. Fastest ever lap around there, 24.1 with a 3-litre V10 by the great Michael Schumacher back in 2004. So we're still a bit off that.
Vettel's getting on with it again. He's 3/10 up on Hamilton in the first sector of this latest lap. As we watch and concentrate on this fight. But I wouldn't mind seeing Sebastian Vettel and just looking at the performance of that Ferrari car, because the timing screens indicate to me that whatever was going on for a lap and a half, a couple of laps, he might have got over that, and he's starting that challenge again. Hamilton is 8.5 seconds behind Rosberg. He's lapping quicker, but Rosberg still should be comfortably ahead.
Checo, front brake wear is critical. We will not make it to the end like this.
So that's a message they are allowed to say. If you carry on doing what you're doing, you're out of the race. So
safety related.
Yeah.
There are now 25 aspects they are allowed to talk to their drivers about. They have sorted up on them, but I won't bore you with them. We'll try and cover them as they arise. But that is terrible. And he can go rear bias on his brakes and start putting more energy, but they're quite small these days because they use the motor generator unit at the back to effectively slow down as well. So there are options, but he's going to have to basically lift and coast. Lift, let the aerodynamics slow the car down, and brake less and brake later. Ted.
That's a double shame, because Perez already lost out under the red flag, guys. Just the way that he and Hulkenberg made their pit stops meant that Hulkenberg's now, what, P7, Crofty?
Yep.
And they've both put on the mediums and just going to do the one stop. And Perez, what is he, P12, I think I'm correct in saying. And so, yeah, it's poor Perez. He was set for, had the race just continued, he would have been set to finish right in front, or right just behind Hulkenberg, but he's several places behind.
Well, and this is it, their strategy was perfect until the red flag came out. Romain Grosjean was running a decent strategy, which turned into a perfect strategy when the race played out, because he's in 6th place at the moment and he's looking fairly good for it.
And is there an irony, quickly, Crofty, that if Ferrari do lose this race because of the red flag, the cause of the red flag were 2 ex-Ferrari drivers, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Gutierrez.
Yeah, there is that. Lewis Hamilton out-braking himself here, Martin.
Into turn 9, he'll have a little scamper along the inside there. He'll then be very slow out of 10.
Well, look, he's lost
down.
almost a second in that middle sector, and what was a 2.5 second gap has now come down to this. And Sebastian Vettel, who was on course, I think, Martin, in about 3 laps' time to be right behind Lewis Hamilton, is now very much right behind Lewis Hamilton, and this is going to be one hell of a defence for the world champion.
Yeah, as I was saying, he was slow out of 10, and he'll be all the way down the next straight would have been slow too, and that's what, as you say, expedited Vettel getting on to his tail. And if he can get through, it's a bit of a save for Ferrari in many respects on the way that they did the strategy and stayed away from those medium compounds. But yeah, it was a 32.0 lap for Hamilton, so he lost about 1.3 there with that error, and just 10 seconds covers the top 3 now.
Well, what many were predicting would be a very comfortable 1-2 for Mercedes here in Australia has been anything but. You're only just joining us, you've missed some of a race, you really have. Sebastian Vettel getting off the line brilliantly to lead the race from Kimi Raikkonen. Hamilton down to 6th, 7th at one stage behind Massa and the 2 Toro Rossos. Ferrari having the strategy to go on and win the race, it seemed. We then had a massive accident between Esteban Gutierrez and Fernando Alonso, brought out the red flag. The race was stopped. Now with 5 laps remaining, because of the way the strategy has played out ever since, Nico Rosberg leads this race, Lewis Hamilton 2nd and Sebastian Vettel 3rd, but for how much longer? Ferrari could have matched Mercedes, put the medium compound tyres on, which both Rosberg and Hamilton have run since that red flag. They didn't. They chose instead to go with a softer compound, the super soft tyres, and give themselves extra pace. They didn't get that extra pace. That allowed Mercedes then to leapfrog them when Vettel had to pit once again. And now we get down 4.5 laps to go. Rosberg's out in front by 10 seconds. Vettel pursuing Lewis Hamilton here, and all the way to the line, might yet have a chance of salvaging 2nd place. In 4th at the moment, Daniel Ricciardo. Real boost for Red Bull, that would be if he could manage 4th place.
Rosberg's going to have to catch and pass a lot of cars before the end of the Grand Prix. I wonder if they'll end up in that Grosjean-Hulkenberg battle as well, with the kind of pace. They might not get that far. Oh, we got a spinner.
Is that Max Verstappen?
I think so.
Who has been a bit hot-headed for the last 10 laps or so, maybe 15 laps or so.
Turn 15 it was, penultimate corner.
And all the steam has been coming from out of his ears this time, all the smoke coming from his tyres. And he just overcooked it going into the slowest corner on the track. His teammate locked up, that's what happened.
Hard.
Sainz locked up.
Yeah.
Verstappen hit Sainz.
Yeah, here we go. That's been sort of coming all afternoon, hasn't it? But Verstappen lost out. Now, will Sainz's left rear tyre have taken a puncture with that? I think he'll know pretty soon if it has. And I think we'd have already seen by now, frankly.
Here comes Vettel.
He didn't lose a place to Palmer.
Here comes Vettel, Martin. He's second behind and maybe just a little bit shorter as well. Into turn 3 we go. On the brakes, closes up behind the rear wing of Lewis Hamilton. No room through on that particular occasion.
That's where DRS works. It's allowed Hamilton to sort of make his way back through the pack a bit. It also keeps him in play when you're struggling with aerodynamic grip in the turbulent wake of another car. When it's like this, when it just keeps you in play without making overtakes easy, and it's hard to get it right at all the circuits in the world, I don't mind it.
Best season ever for a Ferrari driver on his debut. Sebastian Vettel picking up 13 podiums last year. Whilst he saw Lewis Hamilton pick up his 3rd World Championship. Hamilton going into this season trying to equal Sebastian Vettel with 4 world titles. We've got the longest season on the calendar. I would like to see these two running neck and neck throughout each and every one of the 21 races, and Nico Rosberg to join them for company, because there's been shades and mentions, haven't there, from back to 1986, Mansell and Piquet and Prost. And I wonder if we're going to get that again, that similar season this year.
3 laps to go then. It seems to me that Mercedes are not going to run and hide this year from Ferrari.
That's what it wants. They probably still have the best car. They didn't get the best start today, and Ferrari didn't run the best strategy. But that's just added to the excitement, and this has been a super race. For Nico Rosberg, it's been a brilliant afternoon, given that the one thing he had to do was to come to Australia, not live in his teammate's shadow, and try and beat him and go off with a win. Well, you'd argue that Hamilton's been the quicker of the 2 Mercedes drivers all weekend long, but at the moment he's not going to waltz off with a win, Lewis Hamilton, and Rosberg will take a lot of comfort from this.
Hamilton with that poor start, and he pitted a lap before the red flag as well, which hurt him.
Yeah.
Because he'd already got these tyres on, so that compromised Lewis's afternoon significantly. But nonetheless, it's been a little bit scrappy, hasn't it? But it's all down to the poor getaway.
You know, Rosberg, he'll take a win and he'll say, yes, thank you very much indeed. Bit of debris on the track, and Hamilton's run over that. At least it wasn't his tyre running over the carbon fibre.
Toro Rosso front wing, I wouldn't be at all surprised. A guess, of course. But that's the only one we've seen that's been connected with lately.
Yeah, they've left a bit on the track, haven't they? Rosberg's...
Oh, he's gone.
Oh, he's
very
gone.
wide.
Sebastian Vettel has debris down there, and he's gone deep into the corner and has that now ended his challenge. You would think so, unless Hamilton makes a mistake himself. And did you hear the cheers from the crowd as Vettel went wide?
Now, if you're wondering why he's still got DRS when he's so far behind, that's because the detection point is at turn 14, so he'll get it again now. But down to turn 3. He's really struggled a bit in that corner through the weekend, Sebastian Vettel. It's a tricky little corner. I think his eye was taken off with Hamilton coming up so quickly. It also took a bit of aero off his front wing in the wake of Hamilton's car, and he locked up a front wheel.
Sorry, guys.
Gave it everything, and in the end, he's going to have to settle on finishing behind the 2 Mercedes. Such a shame. You wanted to see Vettel try and throw one down the inside and have a go. I still get the feeling that Max Verstappen's in a position where he's going to try and make a point between now and the checkered flag of getting past his teammate, no matter what they're going to say to him on the pit wall.
Him wrestling that through 16. He's an angry young man, isn't he? Absolutely throwing the car around. Brilliant. He's going to drive to the left, to the right, or clean through him if he gets half a chance, isn't he?
He certainly is. And at the end of it, Toro Rosso might just come out here with a double-point scoring finish. Probably not as much as they were hoping for at the start. Nico Rosberg starts the final lap of this 57-lap Australian Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton is 0.7 of a second behind him. Sebastian Vettel's got 3 seconds to try and make up. Daniel Ricciardo and Felipe Massa completing the top 5. Romain Grosjean, who only finished in the top 6 once in the whole of 2015 with Lotus, goes to a new team and looks like he's going to finish 6th on their debut in Formula 1. And they'll be cracking open a few cans of beer and giving it the big yee-haws down at Haas for that result, and so they should as well.
Absolutely, let's not talk it up too soon. He's got to get over the line yet, but it's certainly been a stellar first race for the new team from America. There they are, and we've all become big fans of Romain Grosjean. There was a time, wasn't there, where he was a bit of a liability out there, tripping over everything that moved, but he sorted that out and became a world-class driver.
He's matured well, he certainly has. Sainz and Verstappen behind Bottas and Hülkenberg to complete the top 10. Jolyon Palmer on his debut looks like he's going to finish outside of the points. We see Nico Rosberg now completing the end of his final lap. I'm just looking at Carlos Sainz, can't quite get past Valtteri Bottas. And the headlines, the cheers and the applause, they're all going to go to Nico Rosberg today. His dad won this race, the Australian Grand Prix in '85. In 2016, Nico Rosberg wins the Australian Grand Prix. And since Lewis Hamilton took his world title, he's finished 2nd to Rosberg in every single race. He's the runner-up today. Sebastian Vettel, who had the race in the palm of his hands, has to settle for 3rd place. Mercedes start the season with a 1-2, and they salvaged, with some very clever strategy, that 1-2 finish from what could have been an absolute disaster for them to kick off this season. Daniel Ricciardo does come home to take 4th place, and a brilliant result for him and for Red Bull, I'm sure. Felipe Massa should take 5th place, and we'll look at this battle and scrapping all the way down to the line. Sainz chasing Valtteri Bottas down towards turn 13. Is he going to throw one down the inside? He has a little look, but no, not on this particular occasion. There's no room through. Verstappen has just lost touch a little bit. Massa will come home to take 5th place. He does, and now all eyes on Romain Grosjean and Haas F1, who've emulated Toyota, the last team to score points on their Formula 1 debut. Brand new team, brand new season, point scoring finish for Haas F1. Congratulations to them. Nico Hülkenberg comes home to finish 7th ahead of Valtteri Bottas, Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen completing the top 10. And a race that Nico Rosberg will be very thankful.
Yes, well done, good job. Yeah, awesome guys, awesome. Thank you very much, great start to the season.
And Mike just smiled for the first time this weekend.
He had a better start than his teammate, not as good as the Ferraris.
Nice job, mate. Excellent. Looked like you had fun today. Thanks, guys. Yeah, for the most part, it was good fun. Nice to be back racing, that's for sure.
It was a great drive from Daniel Ricciardo in front of his home crowd, no doubt about that. Driver of the day, who did you give driver of the day to? Grosjean. He had a non-stop race effectively. He changed with one change of tyres in the red flag, so that played very nicely into his hands, but he's made the most of it. I don't know, my driver of the day, I'm Sebastian Vettel. I'm going to go for it. I don't think it's his fault on the tyres.
He salvaged it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Checkered flag, Roman, checkered flag. Absolutely amazing, dude. Guys, listen to me. This is a win for us. This is a win. Unbelievable for everyone. Unbelievable. I don't even know where we finished. Unbelievable.
You finished 6th. And I suppose, for those guys, have no fear. Haas F1 team are here. Did anyone assume that they could do this?
It's going to go on all season, isn't it? Well, they've shown good pace, haven't they? I mean, they started the first test, they were brilliant, and then they just had loads of gremlins and looked like they might be having all the usual new team problems. And, that's got to the end. Gutierrez, he may well have got to the end if he hadn't have had that coming together with Fernando Alonso, for all we know. Thank goodness Fernando Alonso is in one piece, unlike his McLaren that's in about 50 pieces. But that is a sensational debut for the Haas team, and I'd like to see that, because personally I think that's a great model for bringing in a new team and affording to be in Formula One when you're not a manufacturer's team. I want to see them go well, because for me that's a common sense way to go Formula One racing as they're doing it. I know there's a lot of feeling about some people in the paddock that it's like a junior Ferrari team.
Yep. Well, they bought listed parts. They could work on a wind tunnel program that wasn't part of the regulations. The loophole has been tightened up a little bit since, but do you know what? I like to see people celebrate and do well, and on their debut they've done very well indeed. Yeah. And I think it's good for Formula One. As Romain Grosjean said, it feels like a win, and so it should. Here's a man that maybe this time yesterday wouldn't have been looking at a win. He's not been able to be on the pace of his teammate all weekend long, but as you crucially say, he had a better start than Lewis Hamilton. Mercedes got the strategy right after the red flag, and I wonder what this does now for the World Championship this year.
He had a less bad start than Hamilton, really, is how you describe it. And they touched in the first corner. Luckily, it only was a little bit of damage